And we are live with today's pre-show for the 221,002 Core 2 A Plus study group. Hello, everyone. Hey, chat. It's going pretty well here. We've got recordings going here. Streaming looks good. Statistics are good. I can't see. There's a bar right here. See these numbers, 5.93. That's the megabits per second that we are using as a data rate, and a cache on our streaming devices at 3%. Lower numbers are better. If that number starts creeping up, that means something has gone awry with the network connection. But as I sit here, I know it's kind of hard for you to see from where I am, but this is right in the way, so I can't see that. I may lift up this monitor a little bit. Go. There we go. That's a little bit better. That's not great. That's okay. We're going to have to adjust and get that. See, these are the things we do in the pre-show, everybody. At least I can see the numbers, though. That's the important part. It really needs to come over a little bit more because I don't want to have to keep turning around. You don't see this on your side. I guess this is what you will ultimately see, but I have to turn around to look at the numbers, and that's nobody wants that. That's not great. We need to address the camera. Hello, camera. Hello, everyone. Hello, Virginia, Norway, and Houston, and Texas, and other folks that are checking in. Thanks for being here. I think we need to adjust, change. Hello, Jersey, New Jersey. It's a lot. There's a lot going on here. I feel like it's just constant motion. We did one of these live streams 2 days ago, and I feel like I just stopped the live stream, and I've just restarted it again because so much has happened. Hello, Baltimore and Florida. Florida checking in. Good to have you here, my fellow Floridians. Texas is here. Bradenton, Florida is here. New York, good to have you here. Hello, India, Dominican Republic, and Scola, and Oregon. I need to get back to Scotland. I say that every time, don't I? It's true. I love Scotland. I just found it was just a fascinating place. And the people are so awesome. Hello, Oregon. Orlando, thanks for being here. A couple of Orlandos checking in. Thanks for being here. It's that time of year, though. It's getting kind of warm in Orlando now. It's that part of the year where we let the tourists go to the parks and we wait for fall to hit. And then we go back. Hello, Nebraska and Vegas and Louisville. You guys have had a busy weekend, right? Hello, Orlando again. Azerbaijan. You've got Nebraska. There's a lot of folks checking in. Thanks for being here. South Africa and more Nebraska and Manchester, England. We have all questions in this first hour once we get started. Top of the hour is when we get started. We have all questions from the 221,002. So that's the Core 2 A Plus exam. Oh, boy. We've got plenty to go through, too. I'm looking forward to this live stream. I made these questions. I think I got most of these questions done last week, so I don't remember any of them. So we'll have to see how well I do. I should probably flip through, but if I was to flip through, you'd see something. No, you kind of can't see from that angle very well, can you? What if I did this? You'd really, oh yeah, can't see a thing. Now you're really in the dark. We've got plenty to go through. I'm sure there's lots of questions that many of you will have about the latest A-plus exams. We can certainly talk about that. So Miami is here, Arizona, Louisiana, Ohio, Tampa. Hello, Tampa, Florida. Tacoma, Washington, or Washington. We've had that conversation too, haven't we? More South Africa and Nigeria and Texas, Fort Worth, Texas. Lots going on. One of the things that we will do today, we will do the Q&A in this first hour. In the second hour, I'll open up the chat room for just questions, and we can talk about whatever it is that you would like to talk about. So I think that would be fun. It's an exciting day for my Xboxing because I have an updated version of the Division I have to go try out tonight. Or Division 2, to be specific. They updated and added some new modes to Division 2 today. So I have to go try the new mode and the updates for that. So this is all I'm thinking about, of course, is finding when am I going to have time to do that. We'll figure it out. I have like an hour at night. I can sit down and we're good to go. Other than that, I really don't have the time. There's like 1 hour. And if I lose that hour, well, then we have to wait another day to go the other direction. That's just how it goes. Right now, we are chugging away. I think I shot 5 videos yesterday. I posted 5 new videos today. Those were not the same videos as what I shot yesterday. So I have this sort of grouping, this buffer of videos that I've shot that have yet to be edited, and I'm churning through the editing, and we are absolutely working as hard as we can to get all of those done. That's going to be good. I think if you were someone who was really working towards wanting to get this out fast, I'm your person for this one, because I'm working hard to get these out. We're just churning through. This is going to be a good weekend for shooting video too. So I've got a lot that's sort of lined up. I only have 1 study group next week, and I can just really cram in a bunch of videos all at the same time. You really can't sit and record a lot of videos in one sitting. So there's usually about 5, usually shoot about 5 to 10 in a single sitting, because then after a while you're talking like this. And then if you use the network, the switch, VLAN, and nobody can hear. Your voice just eventually goes out. So we have to kind of make it work very well along those lines. It really is difficult too, because once you kind of get a lot of these in a queue and ready to go, then we end up having to now edit. And the editing is not really that great either. The editing process, the editing's fine. I think they're edited just fine because I'm the one that edits them. But the process just is very rote. You know, I've already watched this. Now I have to watch it again and edit. And occasionally find my errors. That's a good part, is if I do my own editing, I can find the parts where I've said something wrong. I can flag it and then go back and either do a voiceover or reshoot before you get to see it. So that part's important too. We got about 2.5 minutes before we get started. This is not the show. So thankfully, this is not compelling. I realize that. But this is me trying to get things started, making sure my recordings are going down here, making sure the stream is up and everything works okay, making sure my audio is good, the video looks okay, and they do. I think we're in pretty good shape. Gold Rush, you're taking your 1002 today at 5 o'clock. That sounds exciting. That'll be a good one. Is that your second? Will this complete the quest? That's what I'd like to know. Hello, Raleigh, North Carolina. Thanks for checking in. I need to get up there into Raleigh. Haven't been up there in a while. And it's about right time of year, isn't it? Go on up there. It's got to be nice. About right now. It's going to get warm here shortly. Very shortly. The interesting part of what we're doing today is that it's all the 1002, but a lot of what we're going to talk about today also applies to the 1102, the newer version. We can talk some about that as we go through this. Have I even got I do have a, yep, I've got a tag on here. So we can talk about the new version as we go through this. So that's good. Okay, 1 minute. 1 minute to go. And we'll do a live thing. This will be good. I've got other checks. Everything looks good. It does. Audio is set. Is my phone in do not disturb mode? It's on quiet. My watch is in quiet mode. The phone pretty much is always in no volume mode. If the volume suddenly was turned on, I'd wonder what was going on. I think I've got it set for the switch on the side anyway, so I can visually see it. So we're good. Nothing will disturb you. Let's see if I can get presentation running. That's the more difficult part. That is Keynote. There it is. And green light. Yes, green light. Did it go? Yes, it did. Well, that's great. I think then if this will click and go to 12 noon, which it just did, we can do a live stream. Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 2022 Professor Messer 220-1002. That's our Core 2 A-plus study group. We have questions today that we're going to go through in this first hour that I've written. They're brand new. You've never seen them before, and they all come directly from the 220-1002 exam objectives. We also have in our what we call our after show, after this first hour, I'll open up the chat room and we can do some Q&A there. Whatever questions you would like to ask of me, you are certainly more than welcome to do so. If you would like to participate live, if you are watching this live, then you can participate live by popping open a new browser window and visiting this URL, professormesser.com/QA. There'll be a question waiting for you if you follow that link. There's also an app that you can use. Of course there is. Get it from your favorite app store and grab the Socrative Student app. That's the name of the app. It's from a service called Socrative that we use. And it will ask you for a room name once you start that app up. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right, or there'll be nothing in the room. We don't want that to happen. Now, if you've done all of those things, then you will see there is a question waiting for you. That was a question we wrote last month. So this comes from our previous study group. Let's see how much you remember from last month with our study group rewind question that asks, an administrator would like to create a script that runs at the command line during a Windows login. Which of the following would be the best choice? Would it be a batch file, JavaScript, AppleScript, Shell script, or VB script? Now, if you think you know the answer, you don't answer in the chat room. You go to the link that is right here on the page, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. That's where you want to go, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. And we'll come back to this question in just a moment. Thanks for being here. We do one of these study groups every month. And we, of course, are also doing things throughout the month when we are not in a live stream. You can follow us on YouTube, especially since I'm putting all kinds of new A-plus videos out on YouTube right now. I think just this morning, I put 5 videos onto YouTube, and we're just going to keep putting chunks of videos like that every day or so you can get your hands on the new content. It's at professormesser.com/YouTube. We also have daily pop quiz questions. You can find those at professormesser.com/Twitter. And the same questions can also be found on Instagram, except they come with a pretty picture. Go to professormesser.com/Instagram. Now, this study group is for the 1000 series of exams. The 1000 series consists of the 220-1001 and 220-1002. These two exams were released in January the 15th of 2019, and CompTIA tells us that these exams will be gone in just under 6 months now, October the 20th, 2022. At that date, after the 20th is over, those exams will no longer be available. There'll be a newer set of exams we'll talk about in just a moment. To be able to pass these exams, you have to take the exam, which is 90 minutes long for each one of these exams. And we have 2 types of exam scores you need to reach. On the 220-1001, you need a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. On the 1002, you need a 700 on a scale from 100 to 900. And as soon as you pass both of those exams, you're certified for 3 years. So take the example where the exam is retiring in October, but once you're certified, it really doesn't matter what the exam does. You're certified for 3 years, and if you continue to renew that certification, you'll never take one of the A-plus exams ever again, which is kind of nice. Now, this is not your only choice for taking an exam, because last month, less than a month ago, on April the 20th, CompTIA released 2 new and updated A-plus exams. So right now, we have an overlap period where both exams are still active and valid. So you can take whichever one you've been working on. So if you've been spending the last number of months on the 1001 and 1002, you can continue to take those all the way through October. And right now, since these exams are just out, the 1101 and 1102 are just out, so there's not a lot of study materials out there yet, certainly not relative to the older version. I'm still recommending that most of you, really the vast majority of you, still take the 1001 and 1002 it's just going to be a much easier process for you. This estimated exam retirement is November of 2025. The exam requirements are exactly the same as the previous version. So the same scores, the same amount of time, same everything. But I would not recommend stopping your existing studies and jumping over to this new version. As I mentioned, relatively speaking, there's not a lot of study materials available out on the market yet. Usually takes a couple of months for everyone now to create that content and get it published. And in fact, you'll notice on the Professor Messer website, we are already publishing a number of these videos. They're already rolling out. Our course notes for the new version are already available. So you'll start to see more and more of this as time goes by. So you get to decide which set you would like to take. I still believe the 1001 and 1002 is your better bet right now. But of course, that is completely up to you. Today, we're going to be talking about topics from the 220-1002. That means we'll be talking about operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. So I've got questions in all of those different areas. We'll talk about it in just a moment. I do have some free questions on my website, 10-question practice tests for 1001 and 1002. You can find those on my Take 10 challenges at professormesser.com/take10. There's videos, or there are questions there from the A+, the Network Plus, and the Security Plus. So you got lots of options. I also have professormesser.com/podcast if you would like an audio-only version of this replay. So it's a great way to distribute the replays for this, for those of you that are podcast listeners, so that you can easily have this downloaded into your podcast listening app. It's also on your favorite streaming services. You can go over to Spotify or Google Podcasts or whatever you would like. You'll probably find the Professor Messer study groups there as well. There's a video replay of this available on YouTube immediately afterwards. And if you wait about a day, my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching, hey, Lori, she's probably watching at 1.5 or 2x speed because she is figuring out where all the timestamps are for this video. And you can get those timestamps right here. You can see them. They are listed in the video description, and you'll notice there are marks on the playlist. You'll see it as you're playing on the play bar. You'll be able to know exactly where these events occur during the show. So something that's really nice, you can go back years and have these timestamps available, which is really great. When we're not doing this live stream, we're hanging out in our chat. Visit us on Discord. Go to professormesser.com/Discord. Join us. And if you have questions for other people that are studying, or you have a question for me, you're welcome to ask it there too. Go to professormesser.com/Discord or hit the icon that's in the upper right on the website. It's another good way to do it. Now, if you are ready to take your exam, then you're going to need a voucher. You purchase a voucher, and then you apply that voucher towards the exam, whether you're taking the exam at home or whether you're taking the exam it's anywhere else. You could take it in a testing center, for example. If you purchase the vouchers on my website and you're in U.S. and Canada, you can purchase discounted vouchers. These currently are only available in U.S. and Canada, but they do have a discount already built into them. You don't need a discount code. You don't need any type of extra information. You just need to show up on the website, and it's already discounted, which is really great. If you purchase a voucher from my site, you get more than just a voucher. You also get a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This gives you tips for studying. It gives you tips during the exam that can score you some extra points. And it even gives you some tips afterwards if things don't go well and what you can do to plan for the next time you take your exam. All this is available on my website, professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back and have a look at that question we asked earlier, which was, an administrator would like to create a script that runs at the command line during a Windows login. Which of the following would be the best choice? Would it be a batch file, JavaScript, AppleScript, Shell script, or VB script? Let's see how you answered this one. 60% of you, and I believe this is higher than the percentage that answered correctly last month, say it's a batch file. So I think a number of you were taking some notes during our study group last time. We also have a shell script at 32%, but of course shell scripts are used and are referred to as something that is used in Linux or Unix. So shell scripts are not the right answer, certainly not what you would find in a Windows environment. JavaScript is not used for scripting during a Windows login. It's only used, or mostly used, for modifying and creating options in a browser. So not exactly a Windows login. Apple Script, although I don't believe Apple Script is part of the exam objectives. That is a real thing, but obviously that's only going to be on Apple systems. And then VB Script, the Visual Basic Scripting, is available on Windows, but it's not commonly used for a script running during a Windows login. That's almost always going to be a batch file or a PowerShell script, one of those two. That's really the best way to go about this. Here's an example of what that might be. You can find out more about this on my video, the 221002 series, section 4.8. The name of the video is scripting. Good way to do it. So let's now shift gears. Now that we have 62% of you that got that right, it is a batch file. Congratulations. But now I want to do a different kind of question. I want to do a performance-based question. As many of you know, performance-based questions are really the first handful of questions you get on the exam. You don't get multiple choice straight off. You get a few additional questions that show up before you get to the multiple choice. So this is an example of what these performance-based questions might be, because really performance-based just simply means it's not multiple choice. It can be fill in the blank. It might put you at a command prompt. It might put you at a Windows prompt and ask you to perform a function. You may ask to drag and drop. There might be, you might be asked to put things in a particular order. You never know what it's going to be. In this case, I have that last option available for you. I want you to put things in a particular order. And this order is specific to the malware removal process. For those of you familiar with the malware removal process, it is available and enlisted in the CompTIA exam objectives. So this is something that's pretty important for CompTIA. Obviously, you would not be removing malware most of the time. You would probably be deleting everything on that computer and starting from scratch or recovering from a known good backup. But you could have a need to remove malware to at least get a system running well enough to maybe retrieve a file from that system before removing everything else. So that is the malware removal process. So I have on the screen the 7 steps of the malware removal process, but they are not in order. So I would like you to put these in order. If you already think they're in order, all you have to do is submit your answer with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it would be in order. How easy to have that there. But it's not the case, is it? These are in a very different order. For those of you listening on the podcast side, here are the malware removal best practices in a scrambled order. They are enable system restore, remediate, quarantine infected systems, educate the end user, disable system restore, schedule scans and run updates, and identify malware symptoms. So that is where you want to focus your efforts, is on those 7 steps and putting them in order. I'll go through these 7 one more time. Enable system restore, remediate, quarantine infected systems, educate the end user, disable system restore, schedule scans and run updates, and identify malware systems. Those are your 7 steps for malware removal. Now, if you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Right there. Lock in that answer at that link, and let's see how much you remember of malware removal. Yes, as I mentioned also in my videos, as I just said, the best way to remove malware is to delete everything and start over. Whether that start over is a fresh install or whether it's installing from a known good backup. You have to really know that that backup is good to be able to do that. That will ensure a 100% removal of that malware. As you're probably aware, if you've ever done this before, removing malware is not a very perfect science at all. We're taking a best guess at what we think needs to be removed from the system to really remove the malware. But every malware is a little bit different. Different malware versions might change and move different files from different places. So you're not always guaranteed to remove malware. And I get the emails from you. You tell me, no, I can remove any malware from any system. I'm really good at it. But the problem is you don't know if you're 100% good at it, and you never will be because there's no way to know that which is why I say the best way to remove malware is to delete everything. That is the only 100% guaranteed way to know that you really have removed that malware. Let's see how you did with this one. We'll start with our malware removal practices for these 7 different steps. The first step that you will run into, the one that really tells you, why am I doing this malware removal, is something weird happened with your system. Something odd is happening that makes you believe that this system has malware on it. So you've had a slowdown, you've seen odd things pop up on the screen, you're noticing files that are different than what you thought they should be, or files that have been modified from the original. That might give you some concern. So first, the recognition of G, identifying the malware symptoms, is where we start. Once we know or believe that that system has malware, we don't want that malware to go anywhere. We'd like that malware to stay on the system and not somehow find its way over to another system. So absolutely, you need to quarantine the system, remove it from the network, make sure there's no extra peripherals plugged in that could be used somewhere else, and have the system available for you to work on, but know that the system is not going to be able to communicate with any other devices. That would be C, quarantine infected systems. Third on our list, now that we're ready to start work, before we do anything, we want to disable System Restore. System Restore is used to maintain previous configurations so that if you update a config and it doesn't work so well, you can effectively go back in time and bring your system back to an earlier configuration without affecting any of your data files. Well, the bad guys know that we want to put malware on a system. We should also infect all of those restore points so that if somebody does do that, then you're absolutely going to want to remove all cases of where malware might have been put. And restore points is a great place to put malware. So that's a good example of disabling System Restore and why you would want to do it. Next on our list, now it's time to fix the malware. Let's remove it. Let's remediate this malware. And usually that remediation involves either a standalone malware removal tool, or maybe it's an antivirus or anti-malware tool that has the ability to remove malware, or maybe it's a manual set of steps where you are manually removing files, modifying entries in the registry. Whatever it is, you're performing the removal process. That is the remediation, and that is the 4th step in our malware removal. Next on our list, now that we believe we've removed the malware, we believe this system is, well, as clean as we can expect it to be at this point. Again, we're not 100% sure we removed the malware, but at this point, we're as sure as we can be. So what we would like to do is schedule this device to automatically scan itself, hopefully in real time, maybe perform scans during off hours or perform full system scans during early morning hours when the system isn't going to be used, and make sure that it continues to update itself so that it always has the latest set of antivirus and anti-malware signatures. That way, if a malware shows up anytime in the next 5 minutes, we'll have the latest set of signatures, and hopefully we would be able to identify it at that point. Next on our list, since we disabled System Restore before, now that our system is running and we've got all the scans and everything and the configuration exactly the way we'd like it, let's turn System Restore back on and perhaps even click a button to go ahead and manually set a new restore point now that we feel really good about the config that we have on this system. And lastly, and perhaps certainly not leastly, we need to talk to the end user and let them know how this malware got onto their system and talk to them about ways that they could prevent this malware from occurring in the future. Those are our malware removal steps and why those steps are in that order. Again, it is to identify the malware symptoms, quarantine the infected systems, disable System Restore, remediate, schedule scans and run updates, enable System Restore, and educate the end user. Those are the malware removal best practices. It's not a bad idea to memorize what those happen to be. You could very easily get a performance-based question like this on it. You could get a multiple choice-based question asking about those types of things as well. And again, my personal preference is to not do any of this and just nuke the whole machine. Restore from backup, restore from a known good image, restore from an original installation media, whatever you can do to delete everything and be able to work with it. Now, if you didn't get those in the exact order, you might have gotten 6 out of 7, 5 out of 7. I guess you could get 5 out of 7. You couldn't get 6 out of 7, but you get 5 out of those 7, and maybe get 2 that were swapped. You know, when that happens, it is possible you could get partial credit from CompTIA. They have stated in their frequently asked questions that on some questions on the exam, you may possibly could get some partial credit. However, they tell you, we're not going to tell you that you're getting partial credit. We don't tell you what questions have partial credit. There's no way to know if you're getting partial credit. So I guess it really doesn't matter. The fact is we have no insight into the grading process that CompTIA uses. CompTIA does not share their grading process with anyone, and therefore you just have to do the best you can. If they give you partial credit, great. If they don't, well, that's too bad. We'll just make it up somewhere else in the exam if we happen to mix those up. Hopefully that helps you. If you need more help or you need more assistance remembering these steps, it's all of my 221002 video 3.3, removing malware. That's where you should go to learn more about it. Let's take another question. I've got a multiple choice question, so we'll shift gears a bit back to multiple choice. This multiple choice question asks, a technician is restoring a macOS system after a drive failure. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it carbon copy, data restore, finder, time machine, or backup and restore? A technician is restoring a macOS system after a drive failure. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it carbon copy, data restore, finder, time machine, or backup and restore? You think you know the answers? There's your link on the screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll figure out what this is. If you've ever worked with macOS, this might be a little more obvious. If you have not worked with macOS, then hopefully you watch the videos so you know what to expect when you need to restore a macOS system after a drive failure. We'll have to see. Yeah, some folks in the chat room saying, never touched it. I've never touched a Mac. Well, you're getting into IT. You're going to touch macOS. You're going to touch Linux. You're going to touch Windows and more. There will be many other operating systems and environments you'll be working with. This is certainly macOS is going to come into your world. And if it hasn't, and other people in your organization don't know macOS, you should probably take it upon yourself to learn macOS, because then you'll be that much more valuable. And you'll have some nice skills that you can use wherever you go, because pretty much every organization has some amount of macOS in it. That's that one I have just run into everywhere to be able to use this. So we'll have to see what the answer is. There's only one answer here. There's not multiple answers. Only one you would use here to be able to provide this functionality. Let's see how we do on this one. I think a number of you have locked in your answers. So let's have a look at the question and the answers again. It was, a technician is restoring a macOS system after a drive failure. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it carbon copy, data restore, finder, time machine, or backup and restore? And if we look at your results and how you voted, 83% of you say it is time machine that would allow you to restore a macOS system after a drive failure. Well, we have other options here, but they're all single digits. 83% of you chose time machine, but only 7% chose backup and restore. 5% chose data restore. 3% chose carbon copy, and 1% chose finder. Well, we've got a lot of options here, but if we start working through all of these different pieces, you'll start to see that 83% is a very big number, and that's what most people say. Yeah, time machine is what we would use. This is the backup and restore functionality that is built into macOS. So you can very easily start up time machine, point it to a previous time machine archive that's on the network. you don't even have to have Mac OS installed in a system. You can simply put in a new drive, boot to a recovery option that gives you the utility to restore from Time Machine. It's a very nice function. I demonstrate this in my video in section 1.9 Mac OS tools. It is a fantastic way to back up your system. It also is one of these backup systems that you set it and then it just runs. The internal Ron Popeil in me wants to tell you that all you do is set it and forget it. It really does work that well. On my system, the one that's in front of me, I have a Mac OS system. That's what you're seeing this on. That Mac OS system is automatically backed up every hour using Time Machine. So it's a fantastic way to do this. Now, there are other options here on the screen. Backup and Restore was what 8% of you chose, but Backup and Restore is the Windows utility for backing up and restoring, and in some cases, in some versions, re-imaging your system. 5% is a Data Restore. That's a nice name for a utility, and it does describe the data restore process, but it's not real. I made that one up. So there's not a Mac OS utility called Data Restore. 3% chose Carbon Copy, which is a commercial product that used to be available way back in the day. It was for DOS. And it worked great. I think there was a Carbon Copy for Windows too for a little bit of time, which was great for imaging. It was a great imaging tool, but not what you would use on Mac OS to be able to restore information. And Finder, which is effectively the file manager for Mac OS, Mac OS system. I couldn't imagine having to drag and drop everything you would need to get Mac OS running somehow using Finder. I don't even know if that's really possible to restore an entire system with Finder. I'm sure it must be, but could you imagine in Windows trying to restore Windows using Windows File Manager? It's the same idea. You would never do that and being able to use it. So that's not going to help you either with any of this. The right answer, the only one that makes any sense, the only one that you really need to find is the answer D, Time Machine. 83% of you chose Time Machine, and that is exactly the right answer. That's what you would use to be able to restore that system. A great way to do it. And the best way to do it, in my mind. It's all built into the operating system. It's all seamless. It's all available. It's all already installed when you start up Mac OS. It just makes a lot of sense to do that. Hopefully you answered Time Machine. If you're not familiar with those utilities, make sure you have a look at that Mac OS Tools video to help you out. Let's do another question. Got another multiple choice question here. This one asks, here it is, a security administrator is using a dictionary to determine if any of the passwords on their system are not following best practices. Which of the following would best describe this process? Is that denial of service, 0-day, social engineering, spoofing, or brute force? You got a few options there. Is a security administrator is using a dictionary to determine if any of the passwords on their system are not following best practices? Which of the following would best describe this process? Is it denial of service, 0-day, social engineering, spoofing, or brute force? Lock in your answer by visiting this link, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to go to that link and be able to lock it in. You got a lot to choose from there. There's all of those are real things in this answer. The last one, I made some things up. I try not to do that a lot because I want to give you answers that could possibly be somewhat rooted in reality. But these questions and answers, this one is absolutely rooted in reality. All of those 5 answers are 5 real things. So you really have a pretty good chance here at being able to answer these. Let's see how you do with the problem at hand. Lock in your answer by visiting professormesser.com/QA. It's a good place to go. Yeah, there have been many tools through the years, I think, called themselves Carbon Copy something. You'll notice that's why I didn't use any of those names. I just used the old Carbon Copy, which is no longer available. It's no longer around, so that couldn't have been the answer. Plus, it was for a different operating system. Did they ever have a Carbon Copy for macOS? I don't believe they did. I think I even looked that up before I wrote the question, just to make sure. Just to make sure I got that one right. Let's see how you got questions hopefully right on this one. The question again, a security administrator is using a dictionary to determine if any of the passwords on their system are not following best practices. Which of the following would best describe this process? Let's see how you answered. 75% of you say it's brute force. That's another strong answer from everyone, although a few more have chimed in on the other four options here. 9% said social engineering, 7% said spoofing, 5% said 0-day, and 4% said denial of service. Well, the real key here is the security administrator using a dictionary. And that dictionary is one that has words that we know. It's words we can look up. If you want to know how ninja is spelled, it's in the dictionary. If you want to know how the word football is spelled, it's in the dictionary. And if you are working with different areas, maybe you're trying to see if a medical environment has good passwords, you might also use a dictionary that's got a lot of medical terms inside of it. So the idea is that the administrator will simply go through this entire dictionary, trying words that we already know. It's sort of finding the low-hanging fruit of your passwords. All the passwords I use are with a password manager, so it's just a random number of letters and numbers and symbols. Some are uppercase, some are lowercase, and none of them are words. So if you went to any of my sites and tried to see if I was using any of these words from a dictionary, the password checker would tell you, no, I am not. And that's really what the security administrator was trying to do, is run through all of these well-known words and see if any accounts happen to match these particular well-known words that are in this dictionary. Much faster way to do this, instead of using every possible combination of letters, numbers, and characters. Otherwise, you would check for AAAAA. Does anybody have that password? No, they don't. AAAAB. Does anyone have that password? No. AAAAC. You see what I mean? So, and those aren't even words. So why would we even test for those? Let's test for the things that human beings tend to use as passwords, which are just normal words from a dictionary. That is the dictionary attack. That is a very well-known attack, of one that is not just used by the good guys, which is the security administrator in your environment, but it's also used by the bad guys. The attackers themselves like to use those brute force attacks to try to find passwords and immediately take advantage of them. So why is it not one of these other options? 10% of you chose social engineering, got up there into the double digits. But in this case, we're not trying to obtain a password by using some made-up story and interacting with people. We're simply taking an existing password file and comparing that to words that are in the dictionary. So there's no, in fact, in this question, there's no interaction with anyone else. There's exactly 0% of this is social. So certainly would not be social engineering. Well, 6% of you said spoofing. Spoofing is when you pretend to be someone else, or you take the form of another machine or device that might be on your network. You might use their MAC address. Therefore, you are spoofing their MAC address. Maybe you're using someone else's IP address. You would be spoofing their IP address. So spoofing in this particular case is not what we're doing. We're simply using a dictionary and trying to see if anybody else used those same dictionary words as their password. We have 4% that said denial of service, and 4% that said 0-day. A 0-day attack is one we've never seen before. Nobody knew about it, and suddenly an attacker has found a vulnerability and is taking advantage of it without there being any known patches on the market. And it suddenly appears and it's in the wild and people are taking advantage of it. That would be a 0-day. Fortunately, we don't get a lot of 0 days. Fortunately, we're able to find the problems and then resolve them and then announce that we resolved the issue with a patch. And then denial of service, of course, is a way to bring down a system so that no one can use it. That wasn't what we were doing in this question. We were trying to find accounts that had easy passwords. So the option here, the one that makes the most sense, is the brute force attack. It's the only one that fits this particular question. 76% of you chose E, brute force attack. Well done. There's a lot in this exam. There's security, there's operating systems, there's installation, there's tools, there's utilities. There's a lot of things you have to remember. What I have done was take all of this information from every single video that I make, and I've created a series of course notes that contain the text, the important graphics, and the tables from my videos. It's all in here because there are 137 A-plus videos in the series. I realize that not everybody has time to read every single one of those, go through and watch everything that's in that video. So I've created these course notes. These are the course notes. There's a digital version that you see on the screen and a physical version that I am holding. They are exactly the same in content. It's just that one is printed on this dead tree. That's what this is. It's printed on paper, and I'll ship it to you. If you purchase the physical version, you get this digital version also for free. So here is the course notes. This is a PDF. If you purchase it right now, you can download it right now immediately. And there's all the charts and the text and the information and the command lines and the information about Mac OS and the security details and everything else that's in your Core 2 exam. This is my course notes. There are some available for Core 1 and Core 2. It's a great way to support the website. Helps keep all of these crazy things we're doing constantly in motion, and we couldn't thank you enough for your support. Find out more by visiting the website professormesser.com/1002notes. Let's do another question. I'm not going to do this question. I'm going to skip a question. Can I do that? Can I skip a question? I'm going to quickly... You know what? No, I'm not going to skip this question. I'm not sure why I put this one in, but it's live. So we're going to do this question anyway, just to see how much you remember. This question, no answers in the chat room. This question asks, here we go, which of the following would be the last step of the malware removal process? And I'm not even going to, maybe I should give you the multiple choices. I think I will. The choices are schedule scans and run updates, educate the end user, enable system restore, quarantine infected systems, or update antivirus engines. So which one is it? Well, let's see how much you were paying attention. That's really what this question is. This one should go quick. I watched the numbers just go zoop all the way up to 90 before I've even stopped, before I've even told you that you can visit professormesser.com/QA and don't put an answer in the chat room. You've already answered 100 times. So let's see how you did. We're going to quickly run through this one. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again, which of the following would be the last step of the malware removal process? Is it schedule scans and run updates, educate the end user, enable system restore, quarantine infected systems, or update antivirus engines? How'd you do? Can we get 100% out of this? Do you think we will? Let's try. 93% say that it's educate the end user. That's close enough, right? We'll round up. We're good. It's 100%. 4% said update the antivirus engines. 2% said enable system restore. And then effectively a tie for that would be schedule scans and run updates and quarantine the infected systems. 92% is pretty solid. Educating the end user, as you heard in our performance-based questions today, is indeed the last step of the process. So you can either do this like one-on-one. Maybe you can put up posters and signs and login banners and anything else that can tell people, here's how you can make your system safer. Let's see if this makes sense to you. So it's a great way to go through this process and really understand what users are doing with this content. Make sure they understand how they should use the network, what they should click on, what they should not click on. Educating the end user, that is the right answer. 91% of you, 92% of you, you remember what we did 10 minutes ago. Good for you, which is more than I can probably say for myself right now. That is indeed the last step in the malware removal process. If you answered B, the 92% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another one, maybe one we haven't seen before. Let's do this question. This question asks, a company has purchased a new application to assist with employee benefits. The IT team does not have access to the application source code. Which of the following would best describe this software? Is it FOSS, commercial, EULA, encrypted, or DRM? An employee has purchased a new application to assist with employee benefits. The IT team does not have access to the application source code. Which of the following would best describe this software? Is it FOSS, commercial, EULA, encrypted, or DRM? Lock in your answer. Follow the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Let's see if you know this one. This is one that's sort of an adjunct to a pop quiz question we did this week or last week. So if you're following me with pop quizzes, you probably got this one right. If you are not following me with pop quizzes, why are you not doing that? Join us on Twitter, join us on Facebook, join us on LinkedIn. Those will all inform you when a new post is available. I guess Facebook doesn't, but LinkedIn sort of doesn't do that either. So the only one that really does is sort of Twitter. Instagram's a good one to use because the questions go on Instagram too. So that would be a good option for working with those. We have a number of you, not quite 100, have locked this one in, which means we're all thinking about what this could be. So let's go back to this question and see if we can break it down a little bit. The question again was, a company has purchased a new application to assist with employee benefits. The IT team does not have access to the application source code. Which of the following would best describe this software? Is it FOSS, commercial, EULA, encrypted, or DRM? And if we look at the results, we're really not quite sure. It's all double digits, and it's not quite a majority. So we've got 11% that say it's FOSS. We've got 45% that say it's commercial. 16 say EULA, 13 say encrypted, and 15 say DRM. So it's sort of 45% saying it's commercial, and then effectively a four-way tie for second for these. So we'll have to see what it happens to be along these lines. Now, someone purchasing software, and in fact, this has probably happened with you. If you've purchased some software yourself, you've probably downloaded it, installed it on your Windows system, but you never got the source code. They gave you an executable. You ran setup.exe. It installed a game.exe, an application.exe, a utility.exe, and you never saw any source code. So this is not an unusual situation. In fact, this is probably the most common of situations is when we're working with this. If we don't have access to the source code, and this is incredibly common on commercial products, it is effectively closed source, or what we commonly call commercial software. This is software that you would purchase off the shelf or purchase from a company. You would install it on your system. So what's interesting about this, and it's remarkable when you start thinking about this, how much software do you install on your computer? I would bet it's a lot. I would bet you install quite a bit on your system, but how much of that do you see the source code? Probably not a lot. Probably most of what you install in your system is already compiled, so there is no source code. So you're installing it, though. Isn't that a security concern? Well, technically, yes. Technically, if you don't know what you're installing, you can't see what you're installing, then you're effectively trusting this software to not be malicious. That's really what this is. And effectively, that is the foundation of IT security. IT security is all built on trust. So we make a decision that this software from Microsoft, we feel that this is good software. In fact, when we install this software on Windows, you may notice that it very commonly does a check to see if the certificate that has signed the software is legitimate. So it checks the digital signature of the software and then says, yep, this is Microsoft software. Microsoft signed it. Therefore, you can have even more trust of this. That's commercial software for you. You see none of the source code. That is the correct answer here. Commercial, 45% of you got it absolutely right. That is what it is. 16% of you said EULA, and a EULA is an end user licensing agreement. It's what the manufacturer of the software or the writer of the software, they give you a document that says you can use this software, but you must follow these terms. It's a legal document. And if you have scrolled down to the bottom and clicked I agree without reading, that was a EULA. You missed the whole thing. It only took seconds, but that's what that was. EULAs apply to commercial software, free software, software with source code, software without source code. Doesn't matter. If it's software, a licensing agreement can apply to that. So in this particular example, being able to have access or not access to the source code is irrelevant to the license that's connected to the software. So that is not the answer we were looking for either. 15% of you said DRM, digital rights management. DRM is sometimes software, sometimes hardware, sometimes a combination that restricts or limits how much you can do with a certain piece of software. So if you are running a very complex CAD/CAM system, it may not run unless you plug in a USB key with a particular certificate on it, and it will only run if that certificate is there. That means that you can't go to another machine, load up the software, and use it. You would have to unplug the USB key and plug it into the new system, and while you're doing that, the original system you unplugged from can't use the software. So that's what digital rights management happens to be. That doesn't apply to this situation either, where we were interested in whether it did or did not have source code. So that's a good example of that. Encrypted software, that's kind of unusual to run into software that you're installing that is encrypted. But let's assume that you did install some software that was encrypted that decrypts itself dynamically when you start up the application. It's sounding more and more like malware, isn't it? But that encrypted software does not have anything to do with whether you're able to see the source code of that software or not. And then lastly, FOSS. FOSS stands for Free and Open Source Software. Open source software means that the source is available for you to view. In some cases, to modify and to recompile your own way if you would like, as long as the EULA associated with the FOSS allows you to do that. See how this works? So free and open source doesn't cost anything. You're able to see the source code, but that certainly wasn't our situation. We purchased new software, certainly not free. We don't have access to the source code, not open source. Therefore, it would not be FOSS. The answer here, the only one that makes sense, is answer B. This is commercial software, and about half of you, 46% of you, got that one absolutely right. So finally, I got a question here that we really had to think about. We had to get through it. I was worried there for a bit in being able to step through those. Let's do another one. We've got some time. So let's do another one in this list of options. This question asks, before I do that, Luis in the chat room with the 200 peso super chat. Thank you, sir. Luis says, I just passed my Core 1 yesterday. Congratulations. Thanks for all you do. Never stop what you're doing. Well, I won't say never, but I don't plan on it. Saludos de Tijuana, Mexico. Thank you, Luis. That's very kind of you. Thank you for the super chat. Congratulations on your Core 1 and best of luck with your Core 2. I'm assuming that's what's next on your list. So absolutely feel free to work hard towards that Core 2. It's going to be a good one once you finish both of those up. Yeah, I don't plan on going anywhere. You're stuck with me for a while, as long as you keep watching. If y'all stop watching, I'll get the hint. I'll go away quietly. But right now, everybody's watching. So we're going to keep this party going as long as we possibly can. Along those lines, let's do another question. Here's the question. By the way, thank you again, Luis. I do appreciate that super chat. Very kind of you. This question asks, which of the following would be the best choice for a Windows 11 computer to share the desktop of a Windows Server device? Would it be regedit? Wouldn't be that. Would it be regedit, MMC, MSTSC, Explorer, or DXDiag? Which of the following would be the best choice for a Windows 11 computer to share the desktop of a Windows Server device? Is it regedit, MMC, MSTSC, Explorer, or DXDiag? There's a lot of abbreviations there. There's some words I recognize. There's a lot there. If you think you know the answer, you want to lock it in, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock it in. No, not only is this question new, they're all new questions. I write them new every month. So, yeah, well, you're right then. To your point, you are correct. This question is new because they all are. That makes it easy, right? I know I can't go wrong then. Right now, I have not reused any questions yet, at least not knowingly. Sometimes, and one of the problems with writing so many questions all the time, for A+, I have written literally thousands of A+ questions in my time of doing this. So occasionally you do end up writing one twice. That does happen all the time. So that's where this would go. So we'll have to see what you do. Yes, this is a Windows 11 question. It is on the 220-1002. Technically speaking, this question isn't about Windows 11. How interesting that it's not a Windows 11 question. So don't be thrown. This could have done a number of things. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But lock in your answer by visiting professormesser.com/QA and figure out what this question happens to be now that it's not a Windows 11 question. What is going on? Why is this working that way? Please no hints in the chat room as we are working through this. I appreciate it. Let's see how you did with this question. Which of the following would be the best choice for a Windows 11 computer to share the desktop of a Windows Server device? And if we look at your responses, which are regedit, MMC, MSTSC, Explorer, or DXDiag, 62% of you say it is MSTSC. We've got 19% of you that said MMC, and now it's single digits from that point. 9% said DXDiag, 6% said Explorer, 4% said regedit. Well, if you've ever worked with the Microsoft Terminal Services Client or the MSTSC, then you know that that is the front end to the remote desktop connection. So that's where that came from. That's why we call it MSTSC, is because this was originally the Terminal Services Client. And you will see this in many times already loaded up and ready to go inside of Windows. This allows you to view the desktop and share a system on a Windows device across the network. You could technically connect to one of those old terminal server devices too. This is what you commonly see on servers. Servers don't often have screens that are there. Sometimes we'll use a KVM so we can attach that system, or we simply remote desktop into that server, and that's how we're able to manage that device. Well, we don't want to take that question quite yet, but that is MSTSC. That is the one we were looking for. And in fact, 63% of you said, yeah, I've used this before. I've worked with this one. So that is exactly what we would use to be able to take advantage of this. Now, the reason I say that this is not a Windows 11 question is because this utility, to be able to share this Windows Server desktop and be able to control this Windows Server desktop, can take place from many different utilities across many different operating systems. And in fact, this question, MSTSC, is also available on Windows 10, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, Windows 7, and going back from there. So this really applies across the board. But there are also remote desktop clients available for Mac OS, for Linux, for iOS, for Android, and for other operating systems too. So the important part is knowing what you're connecting to, not necessarily where you're connecting from. That's the important part. So MSTSC being the Microsoft's remote desktop connection for Terminal Services Client, that is the one you would use to be able to make this happen. Now, it would not be, 18% of you said the Microsoft Management Console, MMC. If you've ever started MMC, it's a blank slate, and then you have to build your own console inside of that. And I guess somehow you might be able to integrate the MSTSC utility within MMC. Really, you can't very easily. So because of that, it would not be the best choice. The best one continues to be MSTSC. Let's look at these other options. 8% said DXDiag. DXDiag is a diagnostics that is used to check the DX utilities on your system for audio, primarily audio and video. So that is great for doing diagnostics of your system, but not for, DirectX can be a crazy thing sometimes, and having some type of utility to do diagnostics is really, really useful, but it's really only going to check your video and your audio. It's not going to do much for you along those lines. We've got other options here. For example, Explorer. 6% of you said Explorer. There are different kinds of Explorers in Windows these days. You have File Explorers. You have the Internet Explorer, although technically I guess that's been retired at this point for Edge. But Explorer doesn't really help you share the desktop of a Windows Server device at all, so that's not what you would use. And then 4% of you chose regedit. Well, if you need to make a change to regedit, first don't. Just don't unless you really, 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 really have to. But regedit has no functionality in there that allows you to share the desktop of a Windows Server device. The only option here that does that is MSTSC. That is the right answer. If you chose C, you got it absolutely right. Before we go on, I want to thank, we'll do two things. We'll do three things first. The first is, if you're watching this video for Continuing Education Unit credit, then you want to follow these instructions so that you can receive an email from me that has been digitally signed, certifying that you indeed watched this 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. Go to the top or bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us. In that Contact Us form, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put the May 2022 Core 2 study group, and then put the super secret code word of the month, regedit. Regedit is the super secret code word of the month. If you could put that in the subject line, that would be so good. If you wanted to put it in the body of the message, you could do that as well. Just put it on a line by itself. This is something I try to go through very quickly, so it's helpful if it's on a line by itself so I can easily find it. If it's hidden somewhere, some folks like to write a long story, and somewhere in the long story, they put the word. I don't get that far. I just don't, I don't have the time to get down that far to be able to, so it just gets, I figure, well, they didn't put it in there, so we'll have to delete that message and keep it moving. Make it very clear so I know you really, really, really want that. And then click the OK button. It gets sent to me. And usually takes me a couple of days to get to all of these and send it off to you. So don't worry, that will get to me. I will get a response back to you. Just follow those, the path there. Go to the Contact Us link at the top or the bottom of my website. Put your name, your email address. Put the May 2022 Core 2 study group and the word regedit. That was the one we chose, right? I chose regedit? Yeah. And then on the body of the message, you can put anything you would like. I read through every single one of these. I'm not able to respond back because I do get hundreds of these every month, but I do like reading through them. And I appreciate you doing that too. Kind of lets me know that you're watching and is this good or not? And you're very good at telling me whether it's good or not. The other things I wanted to mention, that Brian A. in the chat room with the $19.99 super chat, Brian, coming off the top rope. He says, I promised myself over a year ago when I got my first IT job, I'd send you $20. I got my A+ in March, got an offer letter yesterday. How about that for getting a job or getting a better job? Your course notes and tests gave me the confidence to pass. Thank you. You are absolutely welcome, Brian. What a great story. We are so glad to hear of your successes after getting certified. It really does make a difference when you get that certification. Put it in your pocket, add it to your resume, send those resumes out. People are very, very interested in knowing that you've been doing some additional work. And to have your A+ in March and get an offer letter yesterday, that's a pretty good turnaround. So congratulations. Now the sky's the limit. Now you get to do whatever you'd like. It's a slow go. It's a long story to get to where you want to go, but the potential is there. So keep working on those, and thank you for the $9.99 super chat. We sure do appreciate it, Brian. Thank you so much. Legendary 12 in the chat room. Legendary 12 in the chat room. Also, $9.99 super chat. Thank you. Legendary says, on behalf of all of us, can you do that? Is that okay? We'll take it. I want to say thank you for educating us and making me feel safe through my CompTIA experience. You're more than welcome. More than happy to do it. We are very happy with the community that we have built here. I love hanging out in Discord and chatting with everyone. Having these live streams is also a lot of fun because we get to ask questions and really have a more casual learning environment, which I love too. And thank you, Legendary, so much for the $9.99 super chat. It is also appreciated too. And it really does go a long way for keeping this craziness going and making it happen. So thank you so much. Let's, I know it's top of the hour. Can we fit one more in? Don't you think we should do one more question? I think we should. After all, you've already seen it. So why wouldn't I tell you the next question? You saw it for a moment, and that's good enough. Now that the cat is out of the proverbial bag, the question asks, an administrator would like to use a centralized authentication system for all VPN users. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it Radius, AES, WPA2, TKIP, or CCMP? An administrator would like to use a centralized authentication system for all VPN users. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it Radius, AES, WPA2, TKIP, or CCMP? There's your possible answers. Lock in what you think the answer is by visiting ProfessorMesser.com/QA. That's the link on your screen. And lock in your answer. See, they're going a little slow. We're still working up to 100 at this point. We're trying to get there. Trying to get to this last little piece of it. And then we'll talk about what and when and how all of these interesting technologies work in just a moment. I'll give you a couple more seconds to lock in your answer. Visit ProfessorMesser.com/QA, and we'll do that. That CEU code I handed out earlier stands for Continuing Education Unit. It is a code that you can use to obtain an email from me that certifies that you were here for an hour. Technically, you don't need an email from me to use that towards the renewal of your certification. But I like it that I can give you something that you could show someone in the case of an audit. No, I really did attend that live stream, or I watched the replay, and here is the code that I got. So that's what that's for. It's for renewing your cert. If you don't have a cert yet, well, then it doesn't help you, because you can only earn CEUs after you become certified. So getting CEUs now isn't going to help you very much. Well, it's not going to help you at all. Well, no, it's not going to help you at all. The fact that you're here helps you, but me sending you a CEU now without being certified really doesn't help you at all. You're better off to wait till you're certified, then send me the email so that it is dated after the point. But that assumes, of course, that you watched the video or attended live after you were certified. So I will give you those particular sets of criteria on these. Let's try this question, see how you did. An administrator would like to use a centralized authentication system for all VPN users. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would it be Radius, AES, WPA2, TKIP, or CCMP? How did you answer? I want to know. 67%, that's a pretty good number, say it is Radius. 12% say it is AES. 9% said WPA2. 7% say it's CCMP. And 5% say it's TKIP. So 67% is Radius. That's a pretty big number. But is it really Radius, or were we confused about the answer? Nobody was confused here. It is Radius. Radius is probably one of, if not the most common AAA protocol that's out there, mostly used for authentication. There is some authorization in there. There is a little bit of accounting in there, but mostly this is, at least this question is about authorization and making sure that everybody's using the same username and password for everything that they log into. So you can have a Radius server that has links to your centralized authentication database, or it might be that Radius is your centralized authentication database. In most cases, almost everyone I visit uses Active Directory. The vast majority of corporate customers I've worked with were running Active Directory, and that was really their primary authentication database. And so they would have a Radius server that had hooks into the Active Directory database, hooked into it using LDAP. So there was an interesting path. It was someone logging into the VPN. that VPN concentrator would query your login using Radius to a Radius server. The Radius server was set up to authenticate or check that with a database that's on Active Directory that it accessed using LDAP. Oh, tired. After all, that's a lot of hops. Well, it takes just as long to configure and set up, I assure you. So after a while, you get pretty good at it. But there is a lot of steps in the way, a lot of separate services, a lot of separate applications, and everything has to be set up exactly the right way with the right settings. But once you get it running, you do it the first time, it takes you a while. Do it the second time, much shorter, and after that, you pretty much got it. But that is what you should be using for this. It allows you to really, anything you're logging into, you can centralize a switch, a router, a server, a VPN, a wireless network, whatever it is, you can use all of that. And the beauty of Radius is that it's used on so many different systems. It's available on so many different infrastructure devices. It is available in many different software operating systems. There's a free Radius, open Radius. It runs on Linux. It runs on Windows. It runs on Mac OS. All these different servers. It runs pretty much everywhere, and that's why it's so popular, because so many people use Radius. So here, of course, the answer would be Radius. That's answer A. 68% of you got that one absolutely right. Now, there were other options. AES is great for encrypting. That's an encryption algorithm. And if you need to encrypt data, that's a good choice to be able to use AES. But we're not encrypting data here. We're using a centralized username and password to gain access to the VPN. AES is not what does that for us. That would not be the functionality we're looking for, so it would not be AES. We also have 9% that said WPA2. WPA2 is obviously one of the now 3 different WPA specifications for encrypting and protecting data on a wireless network, an 802.11 wireless network. WPA2 is certainly good for that, but it doesn't provide you any centralized authentication method. We have CCMP and TKIP, which are protocols commonly used with WPA2 and WPA, but those two protocols primarily used for combination of encryption and verification of data, in some cases a little bit of randomization. They are algorithms used for wireless networks to be able to communicate with those standards. And again, those are not centralized authentication protocols. They're used to actually perform the wireless functionality. So the answer here would indeed be Radius. If you answered A, 68% of you got that one absolutely right. So a lot of you in the chat room are asking these questions about, well, if you're not using Radius, why don't we use TACACS? Because TACACS effectively does the same thing. Or instead of talking Radius, if we know we have to talk LDAP back to the Active Directory database, why don't we just talk LDAP directly to Active Directory? Or if we're using Kerberos, which adds even more security and more encryption and more functionality to the authentication process, that's after all what we're using when we log in through Windows, why don't we use Kerberos to log in through the VPN? That would make sense. So there's all these other choices we could have chosen. Why would Radius be the right answer here? And the sort of the quick and dirty answer and the more practical answer that you'll find is the VPN concentrator in its configuration supports Radius. And that's all this particular VPN concentrator supports. This VPN concentrator in its software doesn't have a way to hook back to another database through LDAP. It doesn't have a way to connect via Kerberos. It doesn't have any TACACS or TACACS Plus functionality inside of it. All it knows how to do is Radius. So in that particular case, we're going to use that VPN concentrator to talk to Radius. Now, how do you know that based on this question? You don't. I'm kind of giving you the reality, the mindset we go through when we receive equipment. We're setting up this VPN concentrator for the first time, and, oh, we need to hook it into our authentication. What does it support? Well, it only supports Radius. Okay, we'll use Radius. Problem solved. Now, if it was a Cisco VPN concentrator, it probably supports TACACS Plus, even though technically TACACS Plus is not Cisco proprietary any longer. It does have an open standard associated with it. We still most commonly see TACACS Plus associated with Cisco products. It just never, it's stuck there and it never disappeared. It never made its way outside of the Cisco ecosystem. So Radius would be a good answer. If the VPN concentrator supported TACACS, then we could connect to a TACACS server. In fact, if this was a Cisco VPN concentrator and we already had a TACACS server in the data center, then we'd use TACACS. So very often we're deciding which authentication system we use based on what the host requires and based on what we happen to have already installed. That's the reality when you're setting up these things. That's why we choose those. LDAP is the same thing. Maybe I very often would set up a next generation firewall. My firewall could connect back to Active Directory via LDAP. So it didn't need a separate Radius server or TACACS server. I could just talk directly to an LDAP database, and thankfully Active Directory has an LDAP piece that goes on the top of it that effectively translates between the LDAP query and the actual Active Directory database. It's all LDAP under the surface. So LDAP would have been a good option if I was using that particular firewall. Some firewalls, some devices support Kerberos. So you could talk directly to Active Directory over the native Kerberos that we commonly use when we log in with Windows. So again, it's really about what does this device support and what do we commonly use in the back end of our data center on the authentication side. And then we have to figure out where we have a match. And where we have a match, we can configure those two things. And now you've got a centralized authentication system. See, that's how it works. Everybody gets in a room and says, we're buying this new VPN concentrator. It supports Radius. Or maybe the question is, oh, we need to have the authentication. What does it support? Well, let me look at the specs. The specs say it supports Radius and LDAP. Well, we don't like talking directly with LDAP to the database, so we already have a Radius server. Let's use Radius. And that's the process we commonly go through when we're setting up this authentication. And that was a very long answer for the question someone else put in the chat room about why would we not use one or the other of these things. But hopefully that gives you some context. Well, we've come to the end of our questions for me asking you. We're going to turn this around in a moment, have you ask me questions. We'll just keep this process going. But in the meantime, I want to remind you that everything we talked about today and the things we didn't talk about today are in the exam objectives. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/objectives. Download the exam objectives. They tell you everything you need to know or everything you need to learn to then know everything to pass the exam. And this is what I use when I make my videos. So you know that my videos, my course notes, my practice exams will never ask you for information that doesn't apply to the exam. They are always going to apply directly back to these exam objectives. I'm not asking you questions from previous versions of the exam. I'm asking you of the version that you will be taking. And in my mind, that is the best kind of question and information. Find out more at ProfessorMesser.com/objectives. Those are free, by the way, so why wouldn't you go get them? There's also practice exams available. For those of you that have seen my practice exams, they come also directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. They're a physical edition, like the book we see here. There's a digital edition PDF, and it even has a little bit of automation inside of it. Let me bring up a copy of the practice exams, and I'll show you what I mean. Here is a page from the practice exam. This is a PDF reader that I'm using because it is a book. It's published as a PDF, but there are links in the PDF. Here's how they work. So we're looking at question A8. And this says a user in the accounting department has received this error message, quote, "The print spooler service is not running," end quote. The user contacts the help desk, opens a ticket for assistance. The help desk technician performs some magic and identifies the issue. Which of these would be the best next step? Do we reinstall all printer drivers, restart the spooler service, reboot the computer, or power cycle the printer? Now, we would make a note of what this is because I'm in a PDF reader with annotation. I can even mark where I would like it to be. If I think it's C, I can mark C. If I think it's A, I can mark A. You can make changes to this. If you have a pen, you're using a tablet, you can write on this, you can draw on this. And of course, there are links. If you want to go directly to the answer and know whether it's A, B, C, or D, you can go to the quick answer page. But I'd like to go to the details page. Instead of scrolling forward to 44, you can just click where it says the details, and it takes you over to page 44. This is the big difference when we're using these. On page 44, we've got the same question that's here, and then, of course, all the answers that are there. And then we've got the answer indeed showing you that it is B, restart the spooler service. And, of course, for every answer, I tell you why that's the right answer. Now, here's my problem. I never get these questions right. And if I'm taking one of these online or even with a third-party question and answer, they never seem to tell me why the wrong answers are wrong. So on every single question, on every single practice exam, I not only give you a description of why the right answer is right, I explain to you why the wrong answer is wrong. So that's it. That is the big difference in my mind from just knowing why the answer is right to really learning more about the topic in general. And in fact, I'll tell you, if you do get the answer right on my practice exams, I highly recommend you also read through the wrong answers, because you might get questions on your exam that come from topics that are in the wrong answers of my questions. So it's not always just knowing what answer is right. It's knowing more about the entire question and why an answer is right or why an answer is wrong. I also have on this page these QR codes and links. These have links associated with them too. So you can click on that link and go directly to the video that describes the question that I'm asking. Now, once you're done with this, my PDF reader has a back button. Many PDF readers do. You can go back, and now you're back to where you started, and you can scroll down and go to the next question. So it's a very simple way with just a couple of clicks to go find the answer, come back to the question. Maybe you can do all the questions first and then go through the answers. Maybe you can do back and forth. It's up to you. You can do exactly what you would like with this. That is my practice exams for the 220-1002. You can find out more about that on my website at professormesser.com/core2pe. That is the practice exams. And if you get the physical edition, as I mentioned earlier, you get the digital edition for no additional cost. You can download it immediately while you're waiting on these books to get printed and shipped to you. They're printed on demand, so we're not wasting any paper. We're not wasting any ink. The version that you get, that book was printed specifically for you and shipped to you. So no mess, no fuss, comes directly to you in the mail, and we ship worldwide. So wherever you happen to be in the world, we'll get the book to you. We've got a study group available next month for the A+. I have the A+ Core 1 on the 5th and the A+ Core 2 on the 7th. These will probably still be the 220, 1001, and 1002 study groups. There's just not enough study materials on the market for me to even recommend that you take the new exams yet. Certainly by then we'll be closer. I have a feeling this says April. Why does this say April? Where's my June slide? My June slide should be in here. So we're going back in time, everybody. We're back to the future. We're the rewind, and I've got a June one in here. Let's see what the different dates are for June. It's the Cosmic Rewind, everyone, which I saw this weekend for you Disney freaks. I saw that over the weekend. It was phenomenal. The actual dates for those of you that are looking for this, one moment. If I go up to my calendar and flip over to June, I think we'll probably do them in June. Did I plan this out yet? Let's do June 7th and 9th is what I'm shooting for. But I will tell you, although this calendar is not got the right one, the previous presentation did, I will tell you that always go to the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar, because I'll tell you, even these dates might change. So this is one of those situations where my life sometimes gets a bit chaotic and I have to move things around, and I would hate for you to show up and no one would be here. So always check in. I always update the calendar link here, professormesser.com/calendar, and I always update the events link that is in the events channel on Discord. So both of those get immediately right then. Go there and are able to do that. So don't worry. And if you want to wait until April of next year, we'll do another one then too. So technically, this is not quite as inaccurate as you might think. You simply have to wait 11 months. See, there's always a bright side, isn't there? So that is our monthly study group. We've got more to come, though. Stick around. We've got the after show where you can ask me questions such as, why do you not update your calendars? Why do you not know what day it is? You're welcome to ask that. We also have our course notes and practice exams at professormesser.com/1002success. Our Exam Hacks ebook is available for free when you purchase your voucher. Everybody needs voucher eventually. Why not get it at a discounted price and get my Exam Hacks ebook for free at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, we're always available. If you like what you've seen here, there is a thumbs up on this video. We would love it if you should spend some time clicking that link and giving us a thumbs up. It really does make a difference when I'm talking to my associates over on the YouTube side that are asking me, how's it going? How are people liking your videos? How are things going with the video construction? And I could say, have you seen all the thumbs up? They seem to like it okay, so we're going to keep doing them this way. Don't forget about the daily pop quiz questions on Instagram and Twitter. And of course, plenty of videos coming on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed already, now's the time to do it. Lock it in so that you can get your hands on that as well. Thank you for being here in this first hour. Stick around for the after show, and we will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Okay, don't go away. I just haven't shown myself yet. Where am I? That's not it. That's it. Hi, everybody. It's time for the after show. In the after show, I don't ask you any questions. At least I don't ask you many questions. The after show is for you to ask me questions. And of course, you're able to do that from the chat room. There's one embedded on my website at professormesser.com/live. It is the same YouTube chat that you see if you are currently on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube now and you see a chat, and we've been talking back and forth, and we're talking about going to Walt Disney World, we're talking about all those the things that are going by. I'm trying to give you a reference to the things we're talking about so you know you're in the right chat. This is not the Discord chat. It's a different chat when we are not live. We're over on Discord. But for now, we're absolutely this live link or on the YouTube link where I will be more than happy to answer any questions you have about anything related to, well, IT or anything else, really. I won't limit you. A lot of the questions we tend to get about your IT career, or about which exam you want to take or should take, what we might be doing next, all of those things. So we'll start with the obvious question, especially since there are new exams that are on the market now. CompTIA released the 1101 and 1102 exams last month on the 20th, so it's not really even been a month yet. It's been like 20 days so far. And because of that, we have a lot that we could go through here. Because this is a brand new series of exams, there don't tend to be a lot of choices for books, for videos, for sample exams, for labs, and other things until you finally get 2 or 3 months into this. And then you'll start to see them appear because it takes time to write and create this content. And we really don't know exactly what the content or what the exam objectives will be until they really just before they are finally released. So we've been working behind the scenes for months on this content, and you're finally seeing the results of that work by the videos that are being posted on YouTube right now. And you will see additional videos are posted all the time. As soon as we finish a video, we put it on YouTube. So they tend to go pretty quick with those. So I will tell you, though, and this is really, really important, that if you're planning to take the 1001 and 1002, you should only use study materials that are specifically written for that version of the exam that you're planning to take. So if you are planning to take, for some reason, you've decided, I don't care what Professor Messer says, I'm not listening to him, he's not the boss of me, you're not my dad, you can take the 1101 and 1102, which you could. It's available right now. You could take both of those exams. If you take those exams, I highly recommend that you study from materials that are specifically written for the 1101 and 1102. See, you're matching your study materials with the version of the exam you're planning to take. The reason I say that is 30 to 40% of these exams is brand new. That's a pretty big percentage, especially if you're counting on that content for points on a certification exam. So that's why I tell you, if you study for one exam using materials from another exam, you're missing 30 to 40%, in some cases even more, content. So you could easily fail by just having the wrong materials. So always make sure you have the right materials to do that. So that's my recommendation. Same thing applies for the Network Plus, which is currently the same thing is happening. It's in a overlap period between the N10007 and the N10008, except in this case, the 007 exam retires next month in June. I was about to say next month in April, just as an inside joke, but I thought that would throw people. Next month is June, and that's when the Network Plus retires at the end of June. So you can go up to June 30th, and that's your last day to take the 007. If you're starting your Network Plus studies now, don't take the 007. You got like a month, and then that's it. That's not enough time. So if you're starting your Network Plus studies now, the 008 has been out since September. There's plenty of materials available for the 008. It's effectively the one that I recommend is the 008 right now, unless you have been spending months already studying your 007. If that's the case and you're planning to take your exam and pass it before June 30th, keep doing that. Because whether you take the 007 exam or the 008 exam, you earn exactly the same certification. You don't earn a 007 cert or 008 cert. There are no such things. You earn a Network Plus cert. So that's why I tell people who spend the effort to learn the new materials before the books are out, and maybe they don't have all the choices available, and they go into the exam and they go through this extra bit of exam pressure by not having enough study materials. They go in and they happen to pass, which is great, but they've now just earned exactly the same cert they would have had they taken the older version of the exam. The piece of paper is exactly the same. There's no difference. So I understand a lot of people would prefer learning the new stuff, but this is a certification exam where you have to know everything that's on the exam. In 2 months, this little diatribe will have no impact at all. It will have no effect because there will be plenty of books available and plenty of study materials available. And that's why I tell you that that's the case. I tell you, please use what's available. Eventually, in 2 months, this won't matter. In the chat room, Ricky says, found your YouTube channel after I purchased vouchers for the 1101 series. Well, as it turns out, Ricky, the vouchers are not tied to a specific exam. If you have an A+ voucher, and I know that the CompTIA store calls them different, it says this voucher is for the 1001, this voucher is for the 1101. I know that it does that, but it actually sends you the same voucher. It's the same voucher. There's no difference between the two. So once you get an A+ voucher, you can use it for any A+ exam you would like from any version, as long as those exams are currently available. So you didn't actually purchase an 1101 voucher. You purchased an A+ voucher. Now, you could certainly use it for the 1101 against my express wishes, young man. But it can also be used for the 1001. So you have a choice. Employers don't tend, actually, I haven't found any employer that cared which version of the A+ exam you took. All employers care about is that you passed and that you have earned the A+ certification. That's all they care about. The only, and I'm sure I'll get an email, so let me qualify this. The only time someone has told me my employer cares which certification exam I take were people that were instructors that were taking the exam so they could teach it. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people earning the certification, not instructors taking the certification. But to your point, you are right. There are certain cases where an employer may require you to take a particular version of the exam, but that's almost always because you're teaching it, not because you're trying to earn the certification. The vast majority of employers don't care. They just want you A+ certified. In fact, let's say you earned your A+ certification 10 years ago, and during that time you have renewed it every 3 years and kept it up to date. You are just as A+ certified as someone who passes their 1101 and 1102 exam right now. And if you were applying for a job, you would both be equally A+ certified. One person earned their A+ 10 years ago. You earned your A+ 10 hours ago. You are the same as far as certification is involved. So there is no versioning. There is only the having. The having and the getting is the only important part of this. So that's why I tell you that's the important part of this. Now, there are other questions on the exam. I've shown you today the Core 1 and Core 2, the 1101 and 1102 course notes, which are great. And there are, of course, 1101 and 1102 course notes already available. So these things are being rolled out kind of slowly, but that's the way it works usually. It takes 2 or 3 months to finally see everything appear. Same thing applies here. So certainly on there. Now, on my site are other options too. CompTIA has great books. They have great labs. They have great study materials, practice exams. Those are on my site now too. So if you want to purchase something that can help you, and at a discount, I might add, and I bundle in my course notes with these, you can get those on my site right now. So there are books available. There are practice exams available. There are labs available. Most of these are from CompTIA. And those are available on my website for purchase if that's something that can help you. Or wait for my practice exams to come out. Wait for my technology books to come out. They're coming. Or get the entire Success Bundle, which is everything on a flash drive. There it is, little Professor Messer flash drive. How about that? It's kind of fuzzy, but you get the idea. That is what's on our site. And I think this worry about which one do I take in 3 months, really 2 months from now, we should probably be at a point where we can make a decision to say, do we continue with the 1000 series practice and live streams, or do we do some study groups with the new version? So the good part is that you've now got 3 years of 1000 series videos to go back and watch. So there's plenty of live streams you can go back and see with the existing version. Eventually, we'll have to see what the differences are. Now, also in the chat room, question was, how different is the new exam? The new exam is both not very different and quite different. So I'll explain what I mean by this. That doesn't help anyone, does it? That is not an answer. I never like answers like that. Well, it's yes and no is the answer. No, it's one of those. That is a binary question. It needs a binary answer. It's not both. Unless maybe it's quantum computing, and then it is both. See how that works? For you Security Plus folks that are out there, let me bring up the course information and statistics I have for the 220 1002, since this is the 1002 study group. And let's look at the stats for this on the 1002 exam. So let's have a look at what these numbers turned out to be. As many of you are, I go through the exam objectives with a fine-tooth comb. We are picking nits out of everything that's there. And I calculate how many objectives are on the exam. For example, in the 1102 objectives, those are the ones that we went through today. Those are the ones that were released 3.5 years ago, or 3 years ago. Those objectives on the older version of the exam, there are 570 objectives in the way that I count them. So I count things that I have to put in a presentation. They are the number of objectives. 570, that's a good number. How many are in the new version? 580. Not much difference in size, in density. There's 10 more. There's 10 more objectives in the whole thing. They're effectively the same length, the same number of objectives, the same number of things I have to remember. Now, obviously, some of those things you have to remember are harder than others, but we're talking very broadly here. On the 1102, though, even though it's the same size, 210 of those 580 objectives are brand new. You've never seen them before in an A+ exam, I don't think. Mostly all of them are brand new. That means that just over 36% of the 1102 exam, brand new, you've never seen it before. And this is why I tell you, do not study from old books if you're taking the new exam, because 36% of what you need to know to pass this exam, you'll never get. It's all new. That should be the one you take away, is those pieces of it. So that's why I tell you that. Now, on the, interestingly enough, on the Core 1, the 1101 Core 1, the stats are a little bit different. This is interesting. So on the 1101, the 1001, the 1001 had 565 objectives. The new one has 392. A difference of negative 173 objectives. So that part is interesting to me, is that they heard you when you were saying, oh, there's too much stuff to memorize on this exam. A lot of this exam seems to be rote memorization. I'm tired of memorizing. And although there are certainly things you need to memorize on the 1101, there's still port numbers. There's still other things you have to know, but it's not quite as broad as it was on the previous version. However, again, 109 of those nearly 400 different exam objectives are brand new. Again, new content being added to this, which means 28% or so of the 1101 new content. Again, we have to think about, what books do we use? You need to use books that match the exam that you're taking. That's why. So hopefully that will give you some perspective. Both the 1101 and 1102 exams were released last month on the 20th. So they're currently available. You could right now go take these exams, and they do include Windows 11 and Windows 10 and Windows 11. Those are the two OSs you need to know for this exam. Along with, I say Windows operating systems, you need to know this exam, because you also have to know Mac OS. You also have to know Linux. And there's plenty of Linux on this exam. I want to say they increased the number of Linux commands you need to know. They probably did. They probably added some extras on the 1102 that you need to know. It seems like there was more. Let's find out. I'll tell you in a moment. Let's go down to Linux commands, and I'm going to give you actual numbers. So this is from section 1.11. This is my spreadsheet that I do. Identify common features and tools of the Linux client/desktop OS. And here are the commands all broken out. This is where I count them. ls, pwd, mv, cp, rm, chmod, chown, sudo, apt-get, yum, etc., etc., etc. They did add some new ones. The old ones, the ones that were already in the old version, are green, and I give you in my spreadsheet, I put down the number that it came from. It came from section 1.9 of the 1102, or of the 1002. But you can see in the 1102, anything that's new is yellow. Yellow. There it is. So you can see a lot of yellow in here. Not a lot of overriding yellow. It's not like entire sections are yellow. It's just they've sort of peppered it with new content, with new things. So that's where this is from, is those commands. And you can see on Linux, maybe twice as many commands. And that extra section are brand new. So I have to know things like man and top and find and dig and cat and nano. Why do you need to know nano? Is VI even in here anymore? It's not. See, erase nano. This needs to say VI. Nope. Nano is what you need to know. Apparently, you don't need to know VI. So you're just a savage using Linux, apparently. You're not a refined human using a proper Vim editor. I look forward to your cards and letters, everyone. That's where that comes from. So that's my write-up for you to give you an idea. Are these exams harder or easier than another? Well, not really. I think the difficulty level of both these exams is pretty similar to the old version. So I don't think they're any more difficult. I just think the content is different between them. So I want to go back to a question that was written into the chat room from CT with the $5 super chat. CT knows that the best way to get my attention is to put it into a super chat because I am coin operated, as they say. CT asks, hey, Professor, I was curious, how does the CMOS affect the BIOS/UEFI chip? And I think we might be combining some different things together with this. But let's talk about how the CMOS affects the BIOS UEFI chip, because they're sort of always the same. We're sort of using these terms together. In some cases, they're not quite accurate, but that's sort of how we do it in the industry too. So let's talk about the startup process. You know, when you turn your computer on, something has to start. Now, what if your system probably has Microsoft Windows loaded on the hard drive? It might have Linux on it. It might be a Mac OS computer. But when you first turn your computer on, it's not running Windows when you start it up. You see something goes on the screen. There's some splash that comes up and some weird logo from a company you've never heard of. You know, it has these odd things come up on the screen that talk about how much memory is in the system, and it was able to identify something from somewhere, and just a bunch of stuff goes by, and then finally you see the Windows thing start up, or whatever operating system. So that process before your operating system loads, something has to start the computer and get things running. And the thing that starts it up is the BIOS. It's your basic input-output system. Technically, that's referring to the software that is running to get everything going, is the basic input-output system. These days, there is an advanced version of the BIOS called a UEFI BIOS. And we often refer to either you're running the latest version of that UEFI BIOS. If you have a really, really, really old computer that doesn't have the UEFI version of the BIOS, then we say it has the legacy BIOS associated with it, just to differentiate between the old style BIOS, which nobody really uses anymore, and the new version of the BIOS, which is the UEFI BIOS. That's software. Now, technically, we used to store this software on a chip that's on the motherboard because something needs to be there. If we power our computer off and we turn it back on, where's it going to pull this from? We haven't loaded any drivers for a hard drive or an SSD. Your system has to pull this software from somewhere. And back in the day, we stored this in a ROM chip that, in some cases, on some systems, was a CMOS chip. Now, we don't tend to do that any longer. It's not really stored in that type of hard chip that's soldered or socketed to your motherboard. We used to even upgrade BIOS by removing the chip and putting on a new BIOS chip. That's literally how we did a BIOS upgrade back in the day. The way we do it now is, why would you store a BIOS in some archaic read-only memory that can't be updated when I've got USB drives I can update all day? Perfect idea. So what we've done is we've taken our storage for USB that we would have on flash, and instead of having the USB drive, we stick a tiny little bit of flash memory on the motherboard, which is perfect. We can now have our system go to the flash memory, pull out all the software we need, including any configurations that we set, and load that to start our system up. So these days, we still call it, have you updated or upgraded your BIOS? Sometimes we might say, have you updated or upgraded the CMOS? You can see how some people use those terms interchangeably. Because there is no CMOS anymore, we sort of understand what they're saying. So this flash drive, it's not a permanent flash. It's a read-write. In fact, when you're ready to do an upgrade to your UEFI BIOS, you install some software in your operating system, you say, go update it, and it updates the code that's on your flash. That's what that does. Why wouldn't we? I mean, that's what you do with an SSD, right? That's what you do with your hard drive. Same process. So that's what's happening behind the scenes. You still sometimes will see these flash USB on your system, and I have pictures of it in the video, but it's not ROM any longer. It's not a read-only memory. It's a read-write flash. I know we often think of BIOS as being on ROM, because it used to be on that chip. Their read-only memory, you had to remove the chip and put a new one in if you wanted to upgrade. That's why it's not ROM any longer. That's why we don't do BIOS that way. In fact, you hear people saying in the chat room, to be a perfect example, you need to reflash your BIOS. You need to upgrade and update the flash for your BIOS. That's what we're referring to. That's where that comes from, is that BIOS piece. But some of those old terms like the CMOS, they still stick around. We still use that term. Hey, have you updated your CMOS? Hey, have you changed the CMOS config for access to the USB interface? You know, that technically doesn't make sense because there is no CMOS on your system any longer. But for those of us that have been around BIOS for a while, we know exactly what you're saying. And in fact, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say along those lines. So, do I have the course notes for the 1101 and 1102 on my website? I sure do. I'm so glad you asked. If you go to professormesser.com, it is not up here because I just don't have them in the menus yet. But down here under the A+ section, there's two sections here, one for the 1001 and one for the 1101. And the 1101 course notes are right there. Thank you for the ad, Google. I even get Google ads on my own site. What's up with that? So there is the course notes for the 1101 and 1102. All there and available for you with both the digital edition and physical edition pricing. And again, we ship anywhere. If you get the digital edition, you download it immediately. The physical edition, you can also download immediately and make that all work for you. And then, of course, I'll ship out. The shipping process these days tends to be about 3 to 5 business days before the books are printed and shipped. Just to give you a heads up, if you're thinking, I'm going to get a physical version because they are printed individually on demand, it takes another extra day or two to get them printed. But then they go out to you, you get a tracking number, the whole thing works. And they look fantastic. These are high quality, full color. Everything in here is color, except for the text. Text is black, but all the pictures, the images, let me find an example. It's kind of hard in the Core 2 because there's not a lot of pretty pictures in Core 2, but I got lots of charts. Here's an example of the charts that are in there so you can kind of see some color associated with them. And it's nice, high-quality paper. It's designed to be that way, so I wouldn't do it any other way. So that's where that comes from. Some super chats have come in. One from Josiah, $9.99 super chat, who says, in the last 6 months, got my first IT position and a promotion. Look at that. Thanks for all your help. The course notes especially. Thank you for your support with those course notes, Josiah. We really do appreciate it. And in the last 6 months, got an IT position and a promotion. That's all good. I'm interested in knowing if you got the IT position and what that position was. Was it a help desk position? And then you got a promotion. Was it a higher level help desk? Was it a secondary level of desk? There's level 1, level 2, level 3. Or was this somewhere else in the organization? Was it now working with the server folks? Are you now on the networking team? Are you with the database folks? I would be interested to know that. I think other people would be interested to know that too, if you wouldn't mind sharing. We, of course, appreciate the $9.99 super chat, but even more appreciate the stories. Love to know that you got the position, you got the promotion. It obviously wasn't just A+. It wasn't just the things you did here, but overall, that's exactly what we like to see. That's what I tell people is out there. That's the real goal. Josiah says, got a support role to start with. Now, supervising the support team. That's how it's supposed to work. So every time you go to IT, we're talking about leveling up. There's always a leveling up process in IT. There's always a way forward. There's always a way up. There is always some type of next step. Like when you're in an interview, sometimes people will say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, I don't know. It's 5 jobs ago. Because some people really level up every year. They're trying to get another job or get a better job every year. In IT, we tend to call it the 3-year plan. You hear that a lot. Oh, I'm on the 3-year plan. I'll stay here on this position for 3 years. I'll learn everything I could possibly know. I'll become an expert in all of these things that we're working with. I'll become well-rounded and knowledgeable in everything associated with what we're doing, to the point that at that point I can't really learn at the same rate. Therefore, I now need to go above that and start the process over again. I need to be the dummy again and relearn everything there to level up to the next one. This is the part of IT that I think some people don't realize when they get into the industry, is you'll spend most of your career a complete idiot. You will spend most of your career not knowing what is going on around you, or at least parts of it you will just not even understand what people are saying. But you have to learn it. And you become very good at saying, I don't know the answer to that, but I do know who knows the answer to that. I'm going to go talk to them and tell them, see if they can tell me. I would go into meetings every day. I would be a systems engineer for next generation firewall. We would go sit with a customer, and maybe in every meeting I was in, almost every meeting I'm in, a question will come up about a part of the technology, about the functionality of the firewall, about something that it can do or can't do. And they will ask a question that I just don't know the answer to. Completely normal in my common day. And what's odd, you might think, is that, wait a second, you're the senior engineer for this product. You have been taught by the company to support this product in the field. You are the most technical person on the planet, along with your other SEs, when it comes to knowing how this technology works and how this platform operates, and you don't know the answer. Yeah, that's a normal day for me. That's the norm. That's a normal meeting for me. Now, hopefully I know most everything we talk about in the meeting, but occasionally there will be questions that come up. This is normal in your daily IT life, is questions will come up all the time. And now you have to be resourceful enough to know where to go to get an answer. Do you go to Google? That's a tough one. Do you go to a specific Discord that talks about this? Do you call a friend you know that works with these technologies? Do you talk to the support people at the company itself? You have to make that decision. But there should always be times when you're the dummy in the room. If you get to a point in your job where you are the expert, you know everything there is to know about this. Any question that comes up, you know how to answer that question. Anything people need about that technology, you know how to make it happen. You are the master with this technology. And I will argue that if you're that person in that job, you're in the wrong job. You don't need to be that person. You're done with that job. You need to go to the next job, which, by the way, is going to pay more, maybe even give you some extra benefits. You need to be better now. And the only way to be better is to be dumb again. You have to be dumb so that you can then learn those things again. And what was great when you work for a large company like I did that had this next-gen firewall that was very technical and had a lot of moving parts, so to speak. The software was very feature-rich. We had a bunch of engineers that had a background that was very different than everyone else. So our hiring manager was very good at this because he put together a team to begin with that had a lot of people from different backgrounds. My background was primarily corporate America and manufacturers, working as a systems engineer support person already. So there's two things that I bring to the table. If somebody wants to know what's the process like at a corporate environment for getting these technologies implemented, what's the change control process like, what is the segmentation of a large company where one hand may not know what the other hand is doing, how do you work through that when you're trying to introduce new technology into the data center? So having that background for me was very valuable. But there were other things I didn't have experience with at the time. For example, I had never worked with an ISP. That was just not part of what I did in my background. And so questions about ISP and BGP, very, very complex BGP implementations, I might have to go to somebody who's done some very complex BGP just to make sure the way I'm thinking about it matches the actual reality. So I would pick up the phone, call the other SE who's very knowledgeable with BGP. He would walk me through, make sure, do a sanity check, make sure I'm thinking the right thing, or set me straight when I wasn't. And then I could go back to the customer and say, I got this proposal put together. Here's the way I would engineer this based on what I know about BGP and, more importantly, what our experts in BGP know about it. So you use that knowledge, and that made me smarter in the things I didn't know about. So then I became more knowledgeable in BGP because of that. So that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to level up and make that happen. Now to that point, and folks in the chat room aren't wrong. They're saying you shouldn't really chase the money. You should chase that challenge, and because you're doing that, the money will come, which that sounds lovely. Should it work that way? Many times it does work that way, or many times it does not work that way. Sometimes you are working towards a certain increase in pay, but then you are the one who's going to have to work at getting the skills to be able to prove to somebody that you're worth that. So sometimes it's a little bit different. It is a little bit of a challenge sometimes, but as I mentioned, some people are very coin operated, where they are more interested in making more money. Other people want a balance. They like, I want to make more money, but I don't want to travel. Or I want to make more money, but I want more flexible working hours. Or I want my weekends off. Or I want, something else. There's something else in their overall life that they would like to be different. That's completely reasonable too. There's a balance you can find in many places. So find the balance that works for you, and I think you'll be good. Also, super chat from Connor in the chat room. Passed my A+ 30 minutes ago and then showed up for the after show. Thank you, Connor. Says your videos and practice tests were pivotal in my understanding of the content. Looking forward to Network Plus and Security Plus. Well, I'm looking forward to having you watch the Network Plus and Security Plus content. Congratulations on your A+. It's fresh. That's brand new. We're hearing about it, and I'm interested. Did you take it in a testing center? Did you take it at home? And what was your experience? Was it a good or bad experience? You don't have to go into details, but I'm very curious about that too. Connor, congratulations on your new A+, and thank you for the $5 super chat. We appreciate that too. Also want to mention, Connor says he took the exam at home, and how'd it go? It must have gone okay, right? You didn't have any problems. Sometimes people, they tend to have problems taking the exam at home. They're not accustomed to someone always watching them. And when you're at home, you can't do things like this. Oh, I wonder what this question is about. You can't cover your mouth. You can't talk. Technically speaking, you can't cover your mouth and talk in a testing center either. This is not something new. But for some people really are worried about that. But at home, it needs to be quiet. Nobody else can be in the room. There's these very specific rules. It needs to be as secure as a testing center. Connor says, I had a good experience. Glad not to leave the house. Thumbs up on that one. Had the doorbell and mail slot taped so the bell did not go off. That's a good idea. I would not have thought of that in my world of all the noises that go on. That's what you want to watch out for, because anything outside the scope of those rules, and the proctor can immediately tell you your exam is over. Too bad. So he does mention that someone else who took the exam says the only mic I thought I had was on my headset, and they wouldn't let me wear a headset. So I had to figure out where my webcam was and use a mic. That's true. You can't wear a headset. And they tell you this in the rules, but it's such fine print to be able to do that. You may not realize until you get in the exam, no, you can't wear a headset with a mic and then talk. They think you're recording the entire exam. So that's why. Yeah, they'll have you take pictures of the room. You send that in. They check it out, make sure everything looks good. Then they let you sit for the exam. As long as you don't move out of, if you're in the taking the exam and suddenly you move out of frame, well, this is an interesting exam. So tell me, what's the, they're going to, right about there, they're going to say, hey, come back. Can't do that. We're going to cancel the exam because you could be off over there writing something down or recording something. Sean says, I know I did my Security Plus recently. The proctor told me off he got mad at me, I guess, for stretching because it said I looked away from the screen. That's what they do. Yep, that does happen. And Connor says, because of the camera angle, I got pinged too. So there are things you have to be prepared for, but as long as you know these rules are in place, you know that they will tell you about this during the exam. It's not going to throw you. You already know it's coming. You're already familiar with the process. Now that you've watched this and heard other people's experiences, congratulations, Connor, and thank you for that feedback. Thanks for your information, and congratulations on your new A+. William in the chat room with the $10 super chat says, hey, Professor, I have vouchers for the A+ that expire in October. Just found your channel. I have an associate's in IT and the Google IT support cert. So which version should I take? I'm assuming you're asking, do I take the 220, 1001, 1002, or the 1101 and 1102? Do you take the, we're going to call it the old version, the new version, but that's not necessarily true. It doesn't really describe what they are. But for the purposes of us doing this, let's call them that. The old version and the new version. So which version should you take? Well, if your vouchers expire in October, because vouchers, if you were to buy a voucher from my site, they're good for a year. After that year, you had better taken your exam, or you can't take your exam using those vouchers anymore. They do expire. They're no good. And you can't buy it, wait a year, and on the last day schedule your exam for a year from now or anytime into the future. Once the vouchers expire, you can't take the exam. So you can't fool the system by scheduling it and then changing the schedule into the future. Nope, can't do it. Voucher won't allow you to do that. So back to your question, which is, which version do you take? Do you take the old version or the new version? If you're studying right now to take the exam in the future, you should be studying the 1001 and the 1002. You should be studying the old version. That's because the new version doesn't have enough books, doesn't have enough videos, has a relatively small grouping of study materials to choose from. There are many more study materials available for the 1001, 1002. There are many more practice exams available. There are many more labs available. There's lots more options available for the 1001 and 1002. So if you are planning to take this exam in October, you've got about 5.5 months. I would go the 1001, 1002. I would certainly not wait 2 more months to see maybe some new books will come out. You're wasting time. Heck, you could have this done, and if you've already got an IT degree and you've already earned the Google certification, you may be able to get this whole thing done in a couple of months. So why not go with the version of the exam that is naturally easier because there are more study materials available? So that's what I would do. If I was taking it right now, if I was in your position and needing to take this before my voucher expires, I would be taking the 1001, 1002. I'd be taking the old version with no hesitation whatsoever. So it's just easier that way. Let's go with some other questions. Hopefully that helps as well. Let me finish up with William. Hopefully that gives you a perspective. I'm more than welcome to take follow-ups on that too. And thank you for the $10 super chat. All of this works together. We keep this whole crazy contraption of whatever this is running. You know, there's a lot that has to stay running. The electric bill has to keep this going. It's not so bad, really. These are all LED screens. The amount of power that's used in here is actually not so bad. It just looks bad. But for some reason, they still want me to pay for it at the end of the month every time. So that's another thing to consider. So which is more difficult, the Core 1 exam or the Core 2 exam? I would say both are the same difficulty level. Generally speaking, if we're approaching this very broadly, I think the difficulty level, the way the exam is written, the type of content, and the style of the questions is very similar between both exams. However, I would also say that most people have a history, a knowledge, or a foundation that tends to be stronger in one of these two areas. So they either tend to have a lot of knowledge about, maybe they built their own computer before. Maybe they've built their own or upgraded a system for gaming. Maybe they've built a system to use for storing files and movies so they can stream them in their homes. So there might be a hardware component that someone's very familiar with. And if that's the case, Core 1 is probably going to be easier for them. Some people have spent a lot of time with Windows. They've upgraded Windows. They've maintained Windows. They're very familiar with the utilities in Windows. They've used the event viewer before. They've had to troubleshoot Windows booting. They've had to troubleshoot applications that are slowing down. And so they're very familiar with the Windows operating system. Maybe not as much with the hardware that's underneath. For those people, Core 2 is going to be easier. And so you will get a different answer depending on who you ask. Some people will say, oh yeah, Core 1, much easier. I built a lot of systems. I got that stuff down. That was the easy one. Or people will say, oh, Core 2 is much easier because I'm very familiar with Windows. So it really just depends who you ask. But if you were equally unknowledgeable on all of these topics, then both of them are effectively similar in their difficulty level. Hopefully that makes sense for the things you're looking at. Should be. You know, some people have been working at the command line for a long time, like me. Some people have never touched the command line before. That's a brand new thing. So for them, maybe the Core 2 is not so easy. But for those of us that we've used Linux, we got Mac OS, we use Windows, we got it. Okay, Core 2 is simple. I say simple. It's not simple, but the topics on there are certainly much more recognizable for us, and in many ways easy for us than maybe knowing the hardware. So I think there are a lot of practice exams out there that are teaching you the wrong things too. I can't tell you how many times in a single week somebody tells me, hey, I went to your videos and they didn't even tell me how many pins were in the memory. And then I have to ask, well, how many pins are listed in the CompTIA exam objectives? None. So CompTIA doesn't need for you to know that. But a lot of these exams and other things you run into, for some reason, some people will create a set of questions, and then instead of updating those questions when a new version comes out, they'll just add on anything that's new to the question pool. So they started with 100 questions. Now they have 200, except 50 of the original ones no longer apply. So it's really not even that great. And people will come to me and say, how come your videos are so lacking in their content? I said, they're not lacking. They're accurate. You don't need to know the things that aren't on the exam objectives. CompTIA stays very, very, very close to those exam objectives. If it's not in the objectives, you don't need to know it. If it's not in the objective, don't spend your time trying to learn it. You need to know everything in the objectives, because if you do know everything that's in those objectives and you walk into the exam, you're good. You're going to pass that exam. It's solid. So that's why I tell people, don't go outside that scope. Don't go down the rat hole of having to learn. And I've seen people with these big pages of port numbers and memory pins, and none of those extra things are in the exam. Stick to only what's listed on the page. Stick to only the ports they tell you. If they don't mention how many pins memory has, that particular piece of information isn't valuable. And by the way, it's not really valuable. For those of you who work with memory, how many times have you bought memory by walking in and say, I'd like your 144 pin, whatever it happens to be? No, you don't do that, because the memory has a type. I need a DDR4 with this speed. That's what you need. It will automatically fit. There's not like different flavors of that. We don't have memory that comes in different lengths and sizes depending on whether it's on in a single desktop. So that's the real key. You can find exactly what's on the test by going to the CompTIA exam objectives. You can easily find a link to those by going to professormesser.com/objectives, like I have here. There's the objectives. There's a link here. Click here to be redirected to the exam objective page on the CompTIA website. Okay, let's do that. Well, of course I can't. Not in my current form. Now, do I have the wrong link? Or I don't think I do. I think it's the right link, but it's on the oh, maybe I don't. Maybe they changed it on the CompTIA website. Let's do the easy part then. Let me show you how you find it. You go to this. Has anybody ever heard of this? It's called Google CompTIA exam objectives. And here we go. First one, CompTIA exam objectives. And it actually takes you to the right page. There it is. That's what you need. So we need to fix our link that's here. And I'll just do that offline while you're watching me do something else. Figure out it's there. That's where you want to go, is the CompTIA exam objectives. They have everything inside of them that you would ever need to know. And it is a very comprehensive and extremely useful document. So feel free to take advantage of it. It is a fantastic resource for you. And now on my website, if I click the update button, it will be updated so that you can get to that page from the objective page. They must have updated that recently. I think I showed it just a week ago. So they must have done that. I'll purge. Well, I need to view this page and then purge my cache, because everything is cached. Everything is load balanced. Everything. So we'll purge our current page. And now when you go to this page and you click the link that says be redirected, it actually goes to the exam objectives. See the way we do this in real time here? That's what a live event is going to do for you right there. We're in good shape. So that's how you find exactly what's on the test. Let me show you what's in there. Since we're talking about it, I'm going to go to my exam objectives. I've already downloaded them. I've already filled out the form and put it all in there and made sure I got the latest ones. And let's look at the 220-1002 objectives, since this is technically the 220-1002 study group. Let's view it as a whole page. There we go. Here are the objectives, and they are, just scroll through to the first set. So, for example, in section domain 1.0 is operating systems. In that domain are, I need to put this in a scrolling mode. Here we go. And in that page is 9 sections, 1.1 through 1.9. And 1.1 is compare and contrast common operating system types and their purposes. This includes 64-bit, 32-bit versus 64-bit, and we want to know what the RAM limitations and software compatibility would be between those. We need to understand workstation operating systems, including Microsoft Windows, Apple Mac OS, which is now called Mac OS, and Linux, the cell phone/tablet operating systems such as Microsoft Windows, Android, iOS, and Chrome OS. You can already tell the number of these have been updated in the 1101. Vendor-specific limitations like end-of-life and update limitations, and compatibility concerns between operating systems. So that's the first section of the first domain of the multiple domains that are within the 220-1002 exam. That's what you need to know in that section. Now you go through all of that, you check it off, and then you keep going. So that's what you should work through, are all of those. I think that will probably be the easiest way to work through them, for sure, no question. So hopefully that will help you too. Let's see what others questions we have. By the way, for those that were asking about what's exactly on the test, that is what is exactly on the test. They stay very close to this list. They rarely leave this list. And if they do, very often it's a question they're not going to grade you on anyway. Now, they do show, and people have told me, but wait, if you read in these objectives, they tell you the lists of examples provided in bulleted format are not exhaustive lists. Other examples of technologies, processes, or tasks pertaining to each objective may be also included on the exam, although not listed or covered in this objectives document. CompTIA is constantly reviewing the content of our exams, updating test questions, blah, blah, blah. So they're giving you that legalese, saying, we could ask you other things. This is not an exhaustive list, so don't send us an email after your exam. But the reality is they stay really, really close to this list. They rarely leave this list. So that's what that is. That's what we do when we work through those. Hopefully that can help you too as you step through them. I think if someone is working on their exam and they're working towards trying to learn all of this content, that's your best place to go, is the objectives. It should really be the first thing you download. You should read through the entire thing. I know that sounds painful. It is a little painful, but it will give you a scope of what you need to know when you go into the exam. So that's why I mention it. It's a valuable tool. From the chat room, Karumi in the chat room says, I'm about to graduate with a dual bachelor's in BS IST and BSCS. I'm assuming that's kind of a bachelor's in sort of information systems technology, and a bachelor's in computer science, which are now you've really got some choices ahead of you, because those two Venn diagrams barely overlap. So you've kind of covered all the technical things you would need to know in the world. I plan to get an A+ and Security Plus to complement them, mainly due to my lack of experience, but also I would recommend mainly due to employers wanting you to have these things if the jobs that you will be applying to are jobs on the IT side. So for those of you who have not kind of looked at these two sides of IT, they really are two sides of things. Let me bring up a picture of what I mean. I have something right here. Where is it? I've got a presentation. I want to show you. I spent a lot of time on this Venn diagram, just days of time. I probably should have contracted out someone to kind of help me with this, but here it is. Very complex, very difficult to put together, but there it is. This is my interpretation, given my years of experience in the field, of how computer science and information technology interact with each other. And as you can see in the Venn diagram of these two things, there's a tiny little sliver right there in the middle. Just a tiny little overlap. Over here on the computer science side, and I look forward to your cards and letters. You can send me emails about this and you'd be wrong. On the computer science side is, maybe you're right actually, but I'm going to say it anyway. The computer science side are people developing applications, building hardware, writing the software that runs that hardware, creating code and apps. Most specifically, these are programmers. These are engineers that build hardware. They're people that are creating code. Whenever you hear anyone in the people that do this the most for some reason are people in government who really have no idea how technology works, are more than happy to tell us all that the secret to success with technology is learning to code. Okay, well, that covers this circle. Now, what about everybody over here? And I would actually argue, if we wanted to have an argument about it, this circle over on the information technology side is actually bigger. It's more information technology than there is computer science. But for the purposes of us having a nice conversation, let's assume they're about the same size. On the IT side, we have to do all the things that we most associate with things like on the A+ Network Plus Security Plus. We have all of our company's data. We need to store it somewhere. We need to access it. We need to have email systems. We need to access it from the outside through a VPN. We need to connect ourselves, our own remote sites and our partner sites together through IPsec tunnels. We need to protect all the data and encryption and certificates, and on and on and on. All of those are on the information technology side. People who are developing and doing computer science are not the people who are making sure the systems continue to run. Now, I realize there is an aspect of this. There are organizations that would love to cram those things together, but they don't cram together. People doing programming and building applications need to do that full-time all the time to even become slightly good at doing this. It takes years of work to become knowledgeable in how to write these apps. And as it turns out, if you're working on the IT side, you're not writing any apps. You're not somebody who's going to be writing any of this out. So that's not a problem either. So whenever you get into this and you're trying to figure out, what do I do? Well, I guess the question is, what do you like to do? Do you like to write applications, or do you like to work on the IT side? Now, some people will rightly tell me, oh, but wait, Professor Messer, on the IT side, we do lots of programming. We write automation and scripts all the time. Absolutely correct. Now, I don't put that into the computer science side. I don't think writing a script is the, well, it's not that I don't think this. Writing a script is not the same thing as developing an application. It's not even close. And I know this because I can write scripts. I cannot write applications. I'm not really good at that. If I had to, I would. but I'm not any good at writing applications. I'm a bad programmer because I don't have the experience. I don't have the knowledge in how to build an object-oriented application, understanding the nuances of the operating systems, how they're supposed to interact, how they're supposed to work. There's a whole set of knowledge, years of experience you would need to do that well. So writing a script, though, I can do that right now. I automate things all the time. Most of the things on my website, when you purchase a technology, you purchase one of our course notes, and it has to be a printed. Maybe you're getting a physical version of the course notes. Everything happened behind the scenes is automated. So I don't print my own books. I have a third party that prints my books for me. And they have an API, an application programming interface, so I can write a script that says, oh, somebody just bought a book. So send them the email with the link to download the PDF right now. Ask them make sure their address is okay. And then also can contact the API for the printer and tell them, please send a book to this person. Here's their email address. Here's their mailing address. Here's their phone number. And send it in whatever way makes sense for where they happen to live. Go. And then it is routed inside their system to the right printer in the right country, to the right mail system, and it's mailed out after 3 to 5 days. That is an automated process because I wrote a script. Is that programming? I guess in the technical world of programming, if you wanted to call that programming, you could. I don't. I call it scripting because that's what it is. Programming seems to indicate that it's more advanced in my mind than someone just writing a script. So I write that script, it's automated, I'm good. Same thing applies for cloud-based applications. And that's where you start getting into this world of DevOps. That's sort of where I was going with this. And of course, somebody mentioned it in the chat room, hey, wait a second, Professor Messer. Enterprising companies have decided that we're going to take both of those circles and push them closer together. Can I even do that? Or this is a static picture. I think, there we go. They wanted to do this. They want to squish this together a little bit so that there's more overlap. And they've been trying to do this through what they are sort of generically calling DevOps, because there's a developer and there is operations, and they're pushing them together to have those people do the same thing. They'll be not only a developer, but they'll also do the operational side, which is, by the way, a combination that has never worked in the lifetime of IT, and it still doesn't work very well. So what DevOps has now sort of become, and perhaps even more rightly so, is it's sort of morphed into more of someone who can really automate a cloud-based system. That's really what the important part of DevOps is, because we're doing so much cloud, but the real way to make cloud viable is to automate effectively everything about it. And to do that, I need somebody who's really good at scripting. Not necessarily somebody good at programming, just somebody good at scripting. That really understands how to talk to another API, how to integrate with these systems. And a good example, Python does this all day, every day. This is like Python's, this is their wheelhouse, is they can do this type of automation. So that's why I tell people, if you're getting a degree in the computer science side and a degree in IT, now you're going to have to make a decision about which one of these you do, because they don't touch each other in the vast majority of organizations. Or maybe you do leverage it into a DevOps position, and now you're able to, you understand the scripting part of it, you understand the operational side with your IT knowledge, and now you can start really making these systems dance. And that's really what DevOps does, is they make these systems dance really, really well. And as it turns out, they pay pretty good for these DevOps positions. But you really have already had to have some knowledge in how does the cloud work? Where are these APIs in the cloud? And then how do you set a trigger to decide when to change something in the cloud? And then how do you change that without affecting any of the other systems you have running in the cloud? So you see, you can't really jump into that job right out of school either. You really need to learn the ropes first. Then DevOps makes a lot more sense. So I know that was sort of a long answer to a very good question on that $5 super chat, Karumi. But that's what I would recommend. Now, you're going to get A plus. You're going to get Security Plus. Great options. I would almost tell you Network Plus might even be more valuable than Security Plus out of the gate, given that everything you're going to be doing in either one of those areas touches the network. I think understanding the network side may be just slightly more valuable to you. Unless you are living in a part of the world, especially around in the United States, this is around the D.C. area, Maryland, Virginia, those areas, where Security Plus is almost required. That's probably the first thing you should get if you live in those areas, is go get your Security Plus first, then everything else is secondary. So I guess it really depends what your plans are, how you plan to roll it out. That's my approach anyway. And if you're going to be working along those lines, it'd be good to have something you've already got some knowledge in. Now, it may be that your formal degree may not have a direct link back to the things that you're going to be doing in your first job. That's not necessarily unusual. My degree is in business management. I have a 4-year state college degree in business management. Now, how much of that degree talked about technology? 5%, 10%, maybe, not even. Most of it was on accounting principles, cost accounting, personnel management. There were classes in just management in general, but nothing. There was a marketing class. There were just all kinds of business classes, but none of them really were about technology because it was a business management class, business management degree. So I ended up going into technology without technically any formal education in technology. Now, at the time, I had been working with computers for years. While I was in college, I got a job at the university's computing center, being an operator with their mainframes and their supercomputers, with their liquid nitrogen-cooled supercomputers, just amazing technologies on these campuses. So I learned a lot about technology just by being around it. And so when I got out of school, I looked for technology jobs, and I kind of started at the bottom and worked my way up because I did not have a technology degree. At the time, there weren't a lot of technology degrees. There was a degree in the business school for management information systems, which was where you took half of the classes were management classes and half of the classes were computer science classes. So it was basically you learn how to program and then also learn business. That didn't work either. Universities are not the best choice for understanding what type of skills are actually needed outside of the university. They're very good at giving you some very specifically oriented learning exercises. They don't train, and they'll tell you they don't train, which I think is a big reason they don't do a lot of IT. As it turns out, most companies that have IT people would really like more and better trained IT people. And universities are not giving any IT training, very little. It's really hard to find a university doing IT training. So it's a balancing act right now, trying to find the right training for what you're doing. But it turns out, since you're starting at the bottom with these companies, if you just have an interest in technology and you've added to that an A+ certification, a Network Plus certification, a Security Plus certification, or something similar, an employer's going to look at that and go, "Oh yeah, then you got some skills. Let's get you on the help desk, see how you do talking to people," which is another part of it, and see how well you do with understanding how to troubleshoot, and then you can work up from there. It's another good way to do it. So that was a very long overview of what I think about the industry in general, but I think it's a pretty good overview. You can always tell me if I'm wrong about something. You're always good at doing that. So I'm more than happy to listen and see, am I right? Am I wrong? Where do I go with this? We can have a conversation about that. More questions in the chat room. What certifications and in what order would you recommend if you wanted to work as a pen tester? That's a good one. Pen testing, penetration testing is a very, very, very small niche in information technology. So in the chart of IT, there's a little pie piece in there for pen testing. It is a very niche job. And it's mostly a niche job because you have to know a lot about a lot. You have to know about operating systems and their internals. You have to know about networking at the protocol level. You have to understand how systems interact with each other, how to manipulate or understand where security devices are in the network, how to circumvent those security devices. There's a lot that goes into pen testing. It takes a good bit of sort of thought, but you have to understand what you're thinking about to be able to get through it. So there's not any single set of certs. There are some pen test certs out there, but I think if you're working, and I don't want to turn you away from a job in pen testing. There are some great jobs out there in pen testing. People I know work as pen testers, and they are fantastic positions. But there are a lot more other positions in IT than pen testing, even though online it seems like that's the only training there is in the world. Be a pen tester. You could do pen testing. Take our boot camp. Become a pen tester. Okay, there's like 2 jobs in my area for pen testing. So you'd really have to be really good at it to get those jobs. But to do that, I say start it with all these other things I was just talking about. Start with operating systems, networking, security fundamentals, understanding the cloud. Those are technologies that will allow you then to get more knowledgeable, or the knowledge you need to start putting together how all of these work together, and ultimately understand how to circumvent or work with the security that's in those systems, which ultimately is what pen testing is doing. Pen testing is more than just running some scripts and going, here's your report, got it, all done. That was 10 minutes, off to the next one. It doesn't work that way. There's a bunch of legalese involved. There is knowledge about all of these systems that you're touching. In some cases, pen testing is very physical. You're showing up in person. You're circumventing physical security. Becoming knowledgeable in getting around locked doors is one single topic, but it's a big one in pen testing. And there's some great videos on the YouTube, especially from, just start with Lockpicking Lawyer, maybe find the ones where he is working with other people in the video. And they talk about circumventing many of these different security systems that you walk by or into every single day. It's remarkable when you go to one of these shows, you go to Vegas, you go to Black Hat, and you watch some of these presentations. And I highly recommend you watch some of these CanSec West Black Hat presentations that are on YouTube. There's some valuable stuff in there. They're like 1-hour presentations written by people that know more about this than anybody else in the world. And it's remarkable how simple they're able to bring a system to its knees. A very good example, I'll just give you one of many, many, many examples you will get from this. So you go to work, you have this card you use, a proximity card, you push it up against a reader, it unlocks a door, and you walk into the building. And you've seen these card-based locks everywhere you go. You walk up to it, beep, turns green, you walk in. There's probably a sign next to it. No, one person at a time. Nobody can have multiple people through. Everyone must scan through. So all they did to bring the entire system to its knees is out of one of those cards, they got one of the RFID chips. They're about that big. They're tiny. They got one of the RFID chips that doesn't work. And all they did was put a little tape on it and stuck it to the bottom of the reader. And now every time someone comes up with their RFID card, there's enough interference between those 2 chips that the reader doesn't work. So when you do that and you kind of, now suddenly the reader doesn't work. Now nobody can get into the building. And all they did was put an extra RFID chip right on the bottom of this. You'd never know. You'd walk up to it, you'd probably take it apart, probably replace it because you think it's broken. It's just one single example about someone working outside of the normal box that we trust with these security devices, and they're able to manipulate it, and that's where they are. So, good. So, Karumi, now that I've gone through 15 minutes of how CS, computer science, and information technology are different, he says, or she says, oh, no, it's not computer science. It's cybersecurity. All right, CS is cybersecurity. It's sort of okay. So now at least we have one single circle in the Venn diagram. This is great. This is actually much better. So you've got sort of IT and a sort of an emphasis in security there. So how does that pair? It pairs together extremely nicely. To be in a security role, you don't tend to find entry-level cybersecurity. I'm calling cybersecurity here because the industry does. Technically, there's no such thing as cybersecurity. That's not a word. It doesn't mean anything. It sort of is referring to anything security related in the world of technology. That's effectively useless as a term. So from my perspective, you'll often hear me say IT security, which perfectly qualifies to call itself cybersecurity. Absolutely. And in fact, the role that I used to be in as an engineer working with the next generation firewall company, I think they even call them cybersecurity engineers these days. At the time, they didn't call it that because it isn't. But they, everybody has to have that hook, right? So that's the hook. But to get a job in IT security, you need a very strong foundation in operating systems and a very strong foundation in networking. There are not a lot of entry-level security jobs out there unless you happen to be in a very big geography, a very big city area, and you can look around for jobs in a SOC, SOC. So a security operations center needs people that are entry level. We have level 1 people, level 2, level 3, level 4 within the security operations center. So if you're in a part of the world where they have these security operations centers, they're going to be hiring some entry level people. That may be a really good place to get in on the ground floor for security. Where a lot of people do it and how a lot of people help desk, then they move up into operating systems. Maybe they're managing workstations or servers or both. Then they get a job working on the security side. They learn how to manage the switches and the routers. They learn how to set all of their static routing or dynamic routing, how to plan, how to design, how to manipulate and watch the protocols going across the network. And at that point, they now have kind of the foundational knowledge they need to move into an IT security role where your responsibility now is making sure that all of those systems on the workstation, on the server side, and on the network remain safe and secure. So that's why I tell people, don't try for the security job right out of college. Don't try for the security job first thing, unless you happen to live in an area where there's a lot of good entry-level security jobs. And then absolutely you could do that. I think that a lot of people would rather work their way up into security. And in fact, the people that I would work with when I would go visit customers are customers, interestingly enough, that I've worked with through the years. So it was not unusual for me to walk into the room with the security team, and it's people that I used to work with when I was working with the networking teams, because it's a natural progression for those people to be network experts and then use that network expertise in a role that's security related. Happens all the time. So I think that's where you should focus. You don't have to do this all at one time. You can work into the role. I talked about leveling up earlier. Well, you start down here, then you go up to workstations, then servers, then networking, and then security. Make a path. Build out, at least in your mind, what the path is. Make it reasonable. Make it something that makes sense for where you happen to live. And now you know exactly what you should be doing over the next 3 years. Okay, I need to get more knowledge in Microsoft operating systems. I need to know more about how Active Directory works. I need more knowledge in Linux. I need more information about how these databases interact. I need to really understand how these networking protocols are able to move across the network. Then how do I encrypt this data? And then how do I proxy that so I can break the encryption and see what's inside of it? Those are things that naturally lead you into the security world. So I would highly recommend that. I understand schools are teaching people cybersecurity. I understand that there are boot camps on cybersecurity, but those boot camps and those degrees don't get you a security role when there are none to be had. You need to work into these roles, and that foundation that you're getting in your degree and the foundation you're getting, well, sort of in a boot camp. My general impression is you should never take a boot camp. I'm talking about a 1 or 2 week boot camp is relatively useless for everybody. But if you do have that knowledge, that's something you can then build on to move into those roles eventually. I think it's valuable to be able to work through that. Well, I think that brings us to the end of another study group. We were able to have some really good conversations and questions in this after show. I could not thank all of you enough for your questions, for your participation, for your super chats. As I mentioned, I'm coin operated, so that does help me a lot. I have tons of things happening on this side. Make sure that you or if you're interested in more A+ videos, that you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell, because there's a lot of videos coming out over the next month or two. Make sure you are informed and know exactly when those happen. Of course, we do one of these every month. Next month, of course, is April. So come back for the April study group. I will get the May dates put on there. I promise you. So, after May, so we'll do the June and July dates next. So everything will be updated here in the next day or so, I promise. Thanks for being here in the study group. We appreciate you being here in the first hour and answering questions. And, of course, your questions in the after show are always phenomenal. We got good folks here in the chat. We got a great community we've built, and we sure appreciate you joining us. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Alexi. $9.99 super chat right there at the end. Not even a comment, nothing in there. Just had to get it in there at the last second. Thank you so much. We appreciate y'all. See you next time.